an epidemic of mass murder being committed by a virtual army of unidentified assassins. It seems to be a sudden, general explosion of mass homicide. Consistent reports from witnesses to the effect that people who acted as though they were in a kind of trance were killing and eating their victims prompted authorities to examine the bodies of some of the victims. Medical authorities in Cumberland have concluded that in all cases, the killers are eating the flesh of the people they murdered.
Incredible as they seem, are not the results of mass hysteria. First eyewitness accounts of this grisly development came from people who were understandably frightened and almost incoherent. Officials and newsmen first discounted their eyewitness descriptions as being beyond belief. However, reports persisted. Medical examinations of some of the victims bore out the fact that they had been partially devoured. I think we have some late word just arriving, and I'll interrupt to bring this to you. This is the latest disclosure in a report from National Civil Defense Headquarters in Washington. It has been established that persons who have recently died have been returning to life and committing acts of murder. A widespread investigation of reports from funeral homes, morgues, and hospitals has concluded that the unburied dead are coming back to life and seeking human victims. It's hard for us here to believe what we're reporting to you, but it does seem to be a fact. When this emergency first began, radio and television was advising people to stay inside, behind locked doors for safety. Well, that situation has now changed. We're able to report a definite course of action. Civil defense machinery has been organized to provide rescue stations with food, shelter, medical treatment, and protection by armed National Guardsmen. Stay tuned to the broadcasting stations in your local area for this list of rescue stations. This list will be repeated throughout our news coverage. Look for the name of the rescue station nearest you. Make your way to that location as soon as possible.
No longer seek occupancy in private residences, no matter how safe or well protected they may be.
They use everybody maybe 5% of the food available in the human body.
The kind of thing.
With that small amount, the body is usually intact enough to be mobile when it revives.
What are you saying? I mean, you scientists.
Dummies!
You're suggesting...
Dummies!
Listen!
Dummies!
Excuse me. Listen, quiet.
One wonders whether it's worth saving. Why don't we drop bombs in all the big cities?
You're probably serious.
I'm deadly serious. What are the choices? They won't run out of food, young lady. That's the problem, you see. And they won't run out of food while we're still alive.
We can lift you out to safety. Please answer my call if you can hear me.
We've got to remain logical. We've got to. There's no choice. It has to be. It's that or the end.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Great times, great beer. They go together. And there's no better beer for great times than Iron City. Pour a glass or two of Iron City. Watch it come alive with millions of tiny bouncing bubbles that give you a foaming thick head that holds and holds and holds. And how about that Iron City flavor? Rich, robust, delicious. It's the result of over a century of brewing experience. So get with Iron City when you want to make your great times just a little better. You're ahead with Iron City, the beer drinker's beer.
Hey, it's Greg Nicotero. You are, or if you're not, should be watching Alpha Romero on YouTube.
There I am. Little Iron City. What's going on, everybody? The beer drinker's beer. Cheers. How's everybody doing out there? It's a Sunday. It feels like it's been a while since I've done one of these, but it was just last Thursday. I did the double stream with old Grande's Graveyard. That was a lot of fun, talking all kinds of different shit, not just Romero. A little bit of Romero, but all kinds of some not Friday the 13th, but Nightmare on Elm Street, Child's Play, etc., etc. Fun time with him as always. So we're back here tonight talking some Romero. I am Romero the fuck out. Because in preparation of doing this stream, tonight we're doing the my top 10 favorite Romero documentaries. And this honestly was one of the hardest top 10s. I've done top 10s before. This is probably the hardest top 10 that I've had to whittle down, to kind of narrow down to just my top 10. I've literally been working on this thing, going back and forth with, do I want to put this one here? Do I want to put this one here? Do I keep this one out to put this one in? But like, I might like this one a little better, but this one's got a little more meat on the bone. This has been driving me insane. But today, I pretty much spent the entire day going back and rewatching a lot of these documentaries for the first time in quite some time. So yeah, I'm a little on edge right now. I'm a little Romero'd out because I've seen so much shit today, documentary-wise. But I think I have it whittled down. I think I have it narrowed down to my definitive top 10. There are a couple that I did have to leave out that I do want to talk about just a little bit before, some honorable mentions, if you will. But I do think I got these down to a solid 10 that are must-watches, must-see documentaries if you're a George Romero fan. So we're going to get into that tonight. That should be a lot of fun. Let's see what we got in the chat. I've seen quite a few people saying hello already. I see Robert Harbit's II in here, first name on the board. What's going on, Robert? Hello, Mike from Alpha Promotion. How are you tonight? Good to be here live. I'm a little hungover. I'm not going to lie, guys. I'm a little... Last night I went to a wedding for a... I hope everything's coming in okay. Let me hit this Wi-Fi just in case. Just as a little backup there. I got it directly connected to the computer, but hopefully everything's coming in all right. Looking at the playback now, it looks like shit, but hopefully it'll clear up here momentarily. But yeah, little hungover. Went to a coworker's wedding last night, and he had an open bar, and I made the horrible decision to mix beer and wine and whiskey, and yeah, I'm feeling it today. This is like the worst hangover I've had in a while, so it was a good day to just kind of lay around and watch some Romero documentaries and refresh my memory and kind of whittle it all down to where I want it to be. So, but hey, little hair of the dog tonight. I think I'm probably only gonna have one of these tonight, so, but I have to do it. It's part of my new promotional venture with Iron City Beer. I should look into that. I should contact Cliff Forrest and say, hey man, you want to throw me, $20 here and there? I mean, who promotes Iron City Beer more than I do, Anyway, good to see you, Robert. Good to see you, Robert, in here as always. Who else we got here? Matt Landrum, my man Matt, stopping in to say hello. Hope everyone is doing well. Hope you're doing well too, my man. Got your TV. I did go on a secret mission for Matt a couple weekends back. He bought one of the JCPenney solid state TVs from a guy in the Nashville area. It was a little too far, and he wouldn't ship it to him. So I was like, well, dude, I'm not that far. I'll make the little trip. I'll make a trip. It gives me an excuse to go to Nashville, check out some cool locations, and so he got that in today, and that's or not today, but earlier this week. So that's good to hear. I was happy to hear that. And in one piece. Oh man. Trying to figure out why my signal strength is so shitty right now. I apologize, guys. I don't know. Maybe it'll clear up. Who else we got here? Bonnie Bailey. What's going on, Bonnie? Good to see Bonnie, as always. Hope you're doing well, Bonnie. The man himself, John Vulo. Hello! Is anybody there? Good to see John, as always. Man, Ed Trader, Music and Entertainment. What's up, Ed? Good to see Ed in here. Got the 1911 guitar dude himself, Mr. Brett Aitken. And going back to Matt real quick, I forgot to mention this. I know Brett won the contest last year, but we did crown the official King of the Zombies. The tournament ended. Flyboy come out on top, and as voted on by you guys, the official King of the Romero Zombies is Flyboy. And Matt won the tournament, won the contest. So his Jordy Verrill figure is in the mail, so hopefully he gets that here soon. But congratulations, Matt. It was a close one. It came down to the wire. About 250 votes in total, I think, on the final one between Flyboy and Bub. And Flyboy squeezed it out in the end. So congratulations, Matt. And for anybody that wants to know, officially, Flyboy is the official King of the Romero Zombies. Romero said it himself. George said it himself. King Zombie, man, and who better than who better to name it than George? And he called it all those years ago, and we just made it official. The official, the hardcore, the trolls, the real Romero fans made that sucker official. So that was a lot of fun. I hope you guys had a lot of fun with that. I had quite a bit of fun with it. So I hope you guys enjoyed that as well. See, John said, "Oh, excellent Lord Al spot. Distinctly remember that as a kid." Oh yeah, that's one of those things that's like forever stuck in my head. So when I wanted to make the little thing, I was like, "Oh, I have to get the Lord Alfred Hayes promotion." That's living in my brain most days. So I had to throw that in there. So good catch on that one. Paul Brooks, top 10 docs. It's happening. We're doing this. Yes, sir. If my goddamn stream will come through all right. Hopefully it clears up, but yeah. Yeah, it's saying on my end you're blurry and choppy. Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know what the hell I'm doing wrong here. But let's bear with it, I guess, and see. Hopefully it clears up. But Paul is actually the one that gave me the idea to do this. He mentioned something about it on one of the Facebook pages. He was mentioning the One for the Fire documentary, which we may or may not talk about tonight. Spoiler alert. And he was like, that'd be a really good, like, top 10 list or something to do. I was like, yeah, that would be. That'd be kind of interesting. And it was, like I said, it was a huge pain in the ass to kind of whittle down, to kind of figure out what my top 10 would be, because there's so many good ones out there. All the featurettes and the bonus features on all the Blu-rays and DVDs over the years, and so just trying to whittle it down to 10 was a real task. So I think I got a good list here. But hey, by all means, if I'm forgetting anything, if any personals, I think I've seen pretty much all of them. One that I had been missing out on for quite some time, I finally got around to watching here recently. So. And that one may have made the list as well, so we'll talk about that as well. What's up, Paul? Paul Synth / Drums, Mr. Paul Farber. What's going on, man? Good to see you in here. We got Steven Ustrack Jr. What's going on, Steven? Happy campers. Or howdy campers. We're all happy campers. We all know that. Not the man himself, Rick the North Going Llama. What's going on, Rick? Good to have you in here, as always, my man. Let's see. Robert said he voted for Flyboy. I mean, that was my pick for the tournament, but I'd missed so many up to that point that I was out, statistically out of it by the end of it anyway. So, Matt says, how could Flyboy not win? George crowned him King Zombie years ago. Yeah, he did, but I mean, that's why I put Bub as like the one seed. I was like, who the hell's going to be Bub? I mean, Bub is the ultimate zombie, like the main character almost of a film in and of itself. But yeah, I mean, Flyboy came through. It was close. I think it was like 54 to 46 or something like that. Like I said, out of 250 votes. So yeah, it was a close competition. It was going back and forth there for a minute, but Flyboy kind of pulled away a little bit there at the end, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun watching that over the past week or so. Robert's saying Big Daddy should have won. Big Daddy didn't even make it out of the first round. Big Daddy got his ass whooped by Helicopter Zombie. I was shocked by that one. I was like, there's no way. Like, I love Helicopter Zombie, but Big Daddy was like, kind of like Bub, the main character of Land of the Dead. But people fucking love Dawn of the Dead, man. It's hard to beat any of those zombies from Dawn. I think I'm coming in a little bit better. Just looking at the replay here, but 15 minutes in, we'll see. We'll see where it goes tonight. Zombie Historian, what's going on, Zombie Historian? Checking in from South Florida. How you doing, man? Trying to get. We were talking about maybe taking a family vacation at some point this year, and I was trying to talk my fiance, and I was like, "Hey, let's go to the beach." She's like, "You really want to go?" Because I'm not the kind of guy that likes. I'm like, "Oh, I like to go to the beach." Like, I'm a white guy from Kentucky. Like, I don't know, just sun and the ocean, and I can't swim, and it's the whole thing. But I was like, "Yeah, let's go to the beach. Let's go to Fort Myers." And she was like, she looked at me, and she was like, "Why? What's in Fort Myers?" And I was like, "Oh, nothing. They have a real nice beach there. It's a real nice little area, and there's a few Day of the Dead locations I'd like to visit." And she was like, "Oh, okay, I see what's going on here." Because I've never been to those locations, and that's kind of one that's on my list of places to visit before I die. So, but I guess that's a little more up, not quite South Florida, but either way, good to see you, Zombie Historian. But yeah, I guess I'm coming in a little bit better. I don't know why this internet blows dog dick like it does, but it's not even raining. It was a beautiful day today. It's been beautiful all weekend. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, guys. We'll see what happens. Matt's saying he's going back to Sanibel and Fort Myers in July. It sounds great to me. I'd love to get down there at some point. I mean, that's I had the opportunity to move down there at one point from my last job. They all kind of offered me to take over 2 or 3 stores when I was the Papa John's general manager at one point. Offered me 2 or 3 stores down in Fort Myers, and I was really close to taking it, but I was like, it's a long way away, and it would kind of take my daughter away from her family, grandparents, and stuff like that, and they would never forgive me, and I was just like, maybe not, but yeah, I got to get down there at some point. But yes, very cool. I think I'm cleared up a little bit here. I think I'm all right. We're gonna hang on to it and see what happens tonight. We're running by the seat of our pants. Like I said, I'm a little rusty. It's been over a week. I'm used to doing these a little more often, but I've done one since last Thursday with Grande, which again, like I had a great time. If you guys haven't seen that stream, go back, check it out. We had a really good time talking about just a whole variety of topics and in the horror genres. The topic was technically like horror's most controversial booking decisions, which is like this where the storyline goes throughout the series of films, and like where did it go wrong, where did it jump the shark, did they make the right decision? It was really interesting. It was something different, kind of out of my comfort zone a little bit. But I'm right back in it tonight, baby. It's all Romero tonight. Like I said, I'm a little Romero'd out, so I might be on the edge of tweaking here. It's saying Kentuckian Jim Cornette once said he never goes into oceans, and when asked why, Jim said because whales piss in there. That's true too. No, I've been to the ocean one time. I've been to Panama City Beach one year for spring break on like a church trip when I was younger. That's where I bought my first copy of Dawn of the Dead on DVD, was in Panama City at that Walmart. It was right around that same time. It was 2004, so it was when the DiviMax Anchor Bay DVD came out of Dawn of the Dead, and we went to a Walmart there, and I saw it. I was like, holy shit, they have Dawn of the Dead in Florida? I had no idea that they were releasing the DVD. I had no idea. Like, I was still waiting for the Ultimate Edition because I'd been hearing about that one for a while. But I was in a Walmart, and I see a fucking DVD copy of Dawn of the Dead, which was the first for me. I know they'd released it, some years back, but they were out of print and kind of hard to find at that point. So finding it in Florida, I thought like, oh, Florida's special. They get all the cool DVDs. We don't have this shit in Kentucky or Tennessee or anywhere I live. So yeah, that's my main memory of going to the beach in Panama City for spring break back in high school. That's where I found Dawn of the Dead on DVD for the first time. But yeah, there's just something weird about the ocean to me, like especially at night. You're kind of standing there on the edge, and it just looked like you're looking out on the edge of Earth or something. Like you could fall in and get lost forever, which I guess you could technically, but it's So yeah, I don't know, and I don't know how to swim. So I just if I got sucked out into that ocean, I'd be fucked. Thanks, Robert. Says your Thursday stream was great. Good job. Yeah, man. I had a lot of fun with it. I didn't know how the whole like dual stream would go because it was like, yeah, who's going to control what, who's going to do what, and I think we figured it out pretty well. I think it worked pretty smoothly. I'd like to do something like that again at some point. Not just with Grande, but anybody else. I'd love to do that. It was kind of fun. A blending of the worlds. Grande's audience, my audience, kind of coming together, and it was pretty fun. It was a lot of fun to do. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Robert. But yeah, so I think, I don't know, we're still holding up here on this. I'm still getting the little bars here on the side that says my connection shit. I don't know why. But I'm just going to try to ignore it and just push through this, and I apologize if it doesn't go as well as planned, but doing my best. It's a one-man show over here. One-man show. Let's see. So yeah, like I said, I have a couple of titles here of because I'm gonna go ahead and get into this. There's not really any big news or anything really to talk about that has broken here lately. It's been kind of quiet on the Romero front. No real Living Dead weekend news has really broken over the past couple of weeks. We talked about the amusement park comic book. It's coming out. There's the Night of Living Dead book from Titan Books that's coming out. We talked about that on stream a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, outside of that, it's been kind of quiet here lately. So we'll go ahead and get into the top 10 here, and I'm sure we're going to spend quite a bit of time on a number of these. Chet Zar, what's going on, Chet Zar? It's a new name. Good to see you in here. I saw Dawn of the Dead in the theater when it came out in 1979. I was 12 years old, and it was glorious. Well, if only. And I think I saw something today. Today was like the I think Larry posted it on the on Facebook that today was the first, like the opening day of Dawn of the Dead, and it was in the Pittsburgh area. I have that actual ad, that newspaper ad that he posted for anybody that saw it in the Facebook group. I have that ad actually. I just bought it not too long ago. I was going to pull it out and kind of look at it and kind of show it tonight to kind of commemorate it, but I didn't. But yeah, I mean that's I would love to go back in time and experience that on its opening run, But yeah, very cool, man. Rick says, I know this is off topic, but I think the failed Snow White by Disney. We're talking about Snow White tonight. All right, failed Snow White by Disney is truly a dead issue that will not even. That not even a zombie will touch. I don't know what the deal is with that. I guess there was a big backlash because the actress that's playing Snow White. My big thing was like the dwarfs, or wasn't there a big story or something? I don't follow Disney. I'm not a Disney guy. I don't follow Disney news too closely. But wasn't there like a controversy or something a few months back where they were doing it? Or it may have been even longer than that. It may have been a couple of years ago, actually, where they weren't going to cast like midgets for the dwarves or something like that because Peter Dinklage made a big stink about it, and then like Hornswoggle was making a thing. It was like, oh, but you're stealing all this work from little people actors, and I remember that, and they were going to replace them with like hobos or something like that, and I was like, oh, that doesn't make any fucking sense, but So yeah, I don't know what the hell happened with that, but I did see like a clip or something where all the dwarves are like CGI, like things. I don't know. It's the same shit they did with the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. That Willy Wonka, the Johnny Depp, Tim Burton, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Instead of just hiring a bunch of little people to do Oompa Loompas, they just CGI'd one guy 100 times. I was just like, it's like, why? Like, is it? Are there no like little people actors that are looking for work? Because I'm sure there are, but I guess that nobody wants to hire them anymore. I don't get that. But yeah, I don't know. That Snow White thing yeah. I think that was a pretty big loss for Disney for sure. I haven't seen it, so I can't speak on it. I don't plan on seeing it, so I don't expect me to review it anytime soon. But yeah, I was just never a Disney guy. Even when I was a kid, man, like Disney movies didn't do it for me. You know what I would do when I would watch a Disney movie is I would watch, like, let's say like Pocahontas or Hercules or one of those that came out when I was younger. I would watch it, but I would like cast it with real actors in my mind and pretend like I was watching a real movie. It's like, Pocahontas played by Julia Roberts or whatever. And I would use my imagination. I don't know if that's some like on the spectrum shit or something that I'm not fully in tune with, but that's how I would have to watch Disney movies when I was a kid. Like if we were watching one, I'd have to pretend like I was watching a real movie. I never could get into like cartoons and shit like that when I was younger. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not a big Disney guy, so I haven't really been paying too close attention to what's going on with the Snow White controversy lately. Chet says, I had cool parents. Yeah, I had pretty cool parents too. I mean, like I said, I grew up, my heroes were Chuck Norris, and like my first heroes from watching movies when I was real little, like 4 or 5, was Chuck Norris, Clint Eastwood, and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like those were my guys. Like I wanted to grow up to be Chuck Norris, Clint Eastwood, or Arnold Schwarzenegger. Because my parents were cool. Like they were just like, oh, he's just watching, he's watching his movies and it's fine, The only thing they would get a little uptight about is if there was like nudity or something. They'd be like, no, you got to close your eyes. You can't watch this. But if somebody was getting blown away on screen, it was just like, oh yeah. And then I would have my toy guns. That was back when kids played with toy guns. Do kids even play with toy guns anymore? Like I don't see them anymore. But I don't see kids running around the neighborhood. Like when we were kids, like we'd be running around the neighborhood with like little plastic M16s and fucking 6-shooters and just playing cowboys and Indians and war. We'd play war, like I don't know. I don't think kids do that anymore. I don't think you can run around the neighborhood with a fake gun anymore. You'd probably get arrested. But yeah, I don't know. My parents were just like, whatever. You want to jump off the roof, jump off the roof. But if you get hurt, don't cry. Be like, okay. It's saying you're right. Peter and the other little actors raised a stink. Plus the whole go broke issue. Yeah, I think that was a thing too. But the lead actress was just kind of like Snow White, she's not white, or I don't remember what it was, but people got pissed off at her about some shit. So I think that probably had a lot to do with it. But yeah, I think that movie was just doomed from the beginning. I don't know, man. I'm not a Disney guy. Like I have no interest in anything Disney. I don't have any interest in most movies that come out now, period. Like it's been a while since I've been to the movies to see any damn thing. Wait a minute. Bub has chimed in, the real Zombie King. I was robbed. Bub says I was robbed. How would Bub say that? I was robbed. Maybe Bub was robbed. I don't know. Maybe the fix was in, but like I said, it was pretty 50. I mean, even all the ballots that people, or the brackets that people entered into the contest it was pretty 50-50. It was either Flyboy or Bub. Like, so I mean, it was close. It was close. But I'm sorry, Bub. Like, you're still you're still one of the kings. I don't know. We can't call you the real king of the zombies now, but you're right there. You're right there with Flyboy, my man. Don't worry about it. You still got Bub, you're fine. You're still walking around. You got your revenge in the end. You got a gun. You're good to go. Flyboy, he met his unfortunate end at the end of Dawn of the Dead. So at least you got that over him, I guess. At least you're still here. So yeah, it's consolation for what it's worth. Rick says, "Yep, we had noisy toy guns as well." Squirt gun. Yeah. Oh man, we had squirt guns. We had the ones that had the little. You'd pull the trigger and it would make the noise, and yeah, I had a big time collection. BB guns. You remember those little pump like BB rifle guns? I used to had one of those. I would take because it had the little pump action thing on it, and I would do the Arnold Terminator 2 thing where he'd spin it around and. I'd do that with that, That's all we played with when we were kids. And it's funny because people probably think like, oh, well, kids that grow up playing with guns or like they'll probably grow up to be, mass shooters or gun enthusiasts or anything. And I have no interest in guns now that I'm an adult. Like I don't care for guns. Like I don't want anything to do with guns. Like I don't own a gun. I don't own a gun, let alone miniguns to necessitate an entire rack. So yeah, I don't know. But back when I was younger, man, I had all kinds of different guns, and that's all we did was just fucking let's go play guns, let's go play war, cowboys, whatever, Steven said, I think Nerf guns are still allowed, but only if they're painted neon colors. Yeah, I think those are probably the only ones I've seen lately, are like the funky neon color Nerf guns. So But I know the ones that we had, they could look like real guns as long as they had the orange tip at the end to kind of signify. Which I always thought like, oh, that they're trying to make it look like the fire, like when you shoot a gun, the blast out of the out of the barrel. But I guess it was just to signify that this is not a real gun. Please, police, do not shoot this child. He's just playing with a toy. It's just saying Flyboy has seniority. Yeah. He does have a little bit. He has the seniority. But saying Flyboy can suck it. Hey, if you guys want to do a rematch, we can do a rematch. But I'm telling you, people love Flyboy. People love the Flyboy, man. Robert said, I heard some people say that Bub made an appearance in Land of the Dead. I didn't think it looked like Bub at all. I think they were probably, I was thinking that at one point too. I think they may have been talking about Simon Pegg's zombie that they have chained up with Edgar Wright, and they're doing the photo ops with the zombies. Not Edgar Wright, but Simon Pegg's zombie does kind of look like Bub, like the makeup and stuff. It does kind of resemble Bub. So, but no, Howard Sherman, Bub, I don't think made an appearance in Land of the Dead. I'm pretty sure. Paul says, Bub, you will always be my zombie king. Well, see, there you go. See, it's two different tribes. It's, it's like, it's the Republicans and the Democrats. It's the Bubs and the Flyboys, But hey, maybe we'll see a rematch sometime down the road. Who knows? It says I had potato guns. If anyone here knows what I mean, I didn't have any potato guns, but I know what you're talking about. We didn't have anything like we had BB guns, we had pellet guns, paintball guns. Yeah, I don't know. But I've never actually owned a real gun, so it's kind of funny. Hey, what's going on, Nathan? Nathan B's in the house. Let's see, Robert says, I wasn't talking about the actual actor. I'm talking about the zombie that came out of the cooler in the liquor shop near the beginning. Yeah, I know. Okay, I know which one you're talking about. It does kind of look like Bub. But I don't think that was technically him. I don't think Bub would have been that barbaric at that point. I think he was kind of above that at that point. He would have kind of been more like Big Daddy, kind of leading a horde of zombies across the river. He would have been part of that group. I don't think he would have been hiding out in a cooler waiting to, attack somebody, that's trying to grab a box of champagne or whatever. So I kind of think Bub is a little bit above that. Rick says, yeah, it's too dangerous to play with toy guns out in your yard these days. Yeah, I mean, I've heard stories of like police officers like mistaking, toy guns for real guns now, which you can't, you never fucking know these days. Everybody's losing their goddamn minds. I wouldn't trust a 5-year-old with a toy gun anymore either. He's like, he's got a real gun. He's got a real M16. Blast him, Captain. Oh, okay, you got it from IMDb. I don't think so. I think IMDb. The thing about IMDb, and I know there's a lot of bad information on IMDb because pretty much anybody is available to kind of go on and throw whatever information on there, whether it's real or fake or wrong, right, it doesn't matter. You can kind of throw it on there unless it gets reported or something like that. But I've seen a lot of like misinformation or whatever on IMDb before, so. Bub's saying he's not an alcoholic, so there's your proof. He's not hanging out in liquor stores. Hey, Synth Addicts in the house. Hey there, just finished with a nerdy YouTube synthy chat with my UK friend. Some wacko joined flashing his junk. Hey, well, I'm gonna have to go back and watch that. I missed the good shit tonight. I'm on here fighting goddamn connection issues and shit. We're talking about toy guns and you're over there fucking flashing wiener. Be a part of that stream. What's up, man? See, it's saying Dr. Logan wasn't shot in the head, so he and Bub are still in the mine trying to complete Logan's mission. I've always thought that too. That was always a Roger Avery in that Day of the Dead commentary. That was always his theory, that Logan does get up at some point. But his theory was they kind of meet, but Logan doesn't remember Bub, so it's just kind of like two ships passing in the night type of thing. But which would have been interesting. Bub's straight edge. Well, he's got the razor, the straight edge razor. I guess it's not a straight edge razor, but you know what I mean. It's close enough. Rick says a kid in California was shot by police when it was reported that the kid had an AK-47, but it was a toy-like rifle, pink. Yeah. You would think like a pink. I don't know how many pink AK-47s are out there, but you kind of think they might figure that one out ahead of time. All right, let's get into this countdown. We got 10 of these to go, and I'm sure we've got a lot to say about them. Like I said, I want to do. There's a couple here that didn't quite make the top 10, but I do really enjoy them for various reasons, and I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about them before we get into the definitive top 10. And like I said, this was probably the hardest top 10 that I've done to this point. Like I've done, top 10 zombies, top 10 Romero villains, top 10 Romero heroes, top 10 non-Romero zombie movies, and they were all pretty, like there were maybe one or two I was like, where do I want to put this, where do I want to put that? But this was one that I've gone, but like, just back and forth on for quite some time. So I didn't want to leave these two out. They're two very different documentaries, but I wanted to give them a quick shout out. In case you guys haven't seen them, I recommend checking them out. The first one is a documentary included on There's Always Vanilla, the Arrow video release. It's a documentary. It's a 30-minute documentary called Affair of the Heart. And it's about the making of There's Always Vanilla. And I really, really enjoyed this documentary. You got interviews with, John Russo, Russ Striner, Judith Ridley, Richard Ritchie, R.I.P. You get to hear from him. I think Gary Striner is on there. And it's really one of the only times you're going to hear them really talk in detail about their time making There's Always Vanilla. And you guys know that I'm a huge There's Always Vanilla fan. I love There's Always Vanilla. And like I said, it's about a 30-minute documentary, but they really kind of get into the time period and what was going on at the time. And you hear some pretty interesting, funny stories from like John Russo. Russo tells a story at one point in this documentary about him and his wife, or was it? So like Ray Lane used to live, I believe, with Russ Striner and Judith Ridley, who was Judith Striner, at that, I think after they had done finished filming There's Always Vanilla. But Ray Lane lived with them for a while. And there's stories about Ray Lane and John Russo smoking joints and staying up all hours of the night and just partying after shooting and all that. And John Russo telling the story about, his wife was a great joint roller back in the day. And it was just like, this is kind of cool because it's the spirit of There's Always Vanilla. There's Always Vanilla is one of those films that it's not a horror film. It was the Latent Image's last dying effort to try to make another film that wasn't horror, to kind of show they could do something different other than Night of the Living Dead. And it kind of captures that late 60s, early 70s vibe in Pittsburgh at the time. It's a total love letter to Pittsburgh. And this documentary really kind of captures that. And the documentary is I think it's a Felsher documentary, which that's a name you guys are going to hear quite a bit here tonight. But it's really good. It's really interesting, and it's one of the only times you're going to hear those people talking about There's Always Vanilla, especially Richard Ritchie, who's no longer with us. So it was interesting getting his take on it, and it was interesting for me to hear their takes and their memories and their stories about Rudy Ritchie, who was the guy who wrote this. And you guys know Rudy Ritchie from, probably most of you guys remember him from Dawn of the Dead. He's the leader of the bike gang that's on the radio. It's like, you just fucked up real bad. That's Rudy Ritchie. And he wrote the screenplay for There's Always Vanilla. He was a part of the crew back then. He was friends with George. He was probably George's first friend, I think, that George had when he moved to Pittsburgh to go to Carnegie Mellon. They met there. And it was just kind of interesting. You can kind of see and hear kind of the disagreements and maybe the hostility that maybe Russ and Russo had towards Rudy Ritchie, because they would work again later on the Booby Hatch a couple of years later. But you could hear, like, in Russ's interview where he's like, Rudy always kind of thought of himself as this revolutionary who wrote some, he would say, like, Rudy wrote some great stuff, but he would just write it and it would just be in a box somewhere in a garage. And it's like, you can't change the world if all your shit's in a box in the garage and you don't follow through with it. And apparently Rudy was a little detached during the filming of There's Always Vanilla. He'd be kind of in and out, with the screenplay, and it was a little disjointed. But it's interesting. It's an interesting documentary. If you haven't checked it out, it's on there. The Arrow video release of There's Always Vanilla, which is the best version of this movie you can get. So highly recommend checking it out. Affair of the Heart on There's Always Vanilla, the making of There's Always Vanilla. And then the other one I wanted to talk about that initially I had 100% in my top 10, because it's one that meant a lot to me the first time I saw it. And it was originally included on the Anchor Bay DVD, the 2-disc Anchor Bay DVD. It's also included on this Blu-ray of Day of the Dead, but it's The Many Days of Day of the Dead, which is a David Gregory documentary, I believe. It's about a 35-40 minute long documentary, and initially it was like 100% of my top 10 Romero documentaries for sure. Because it's one that's the documentary that made me fall in love with Day of the Dead. Like when I watched that documentary for the first time, and it was the first real documentary where they were kind of talking about Day of the Dead, and it was at a time period where Day of the Dead really hadn't been rediscovered yet, and isn't as popular as it is now. So it was really interesting hearing George and Nicotero and Savini. There's interviews with like guys that I don't think they've ever been included in any other Romero documentaries that I can remember, like Dave Ball. Cletus Anderson is one of the guys that's in the documentary. It's a really good documentary. And like I said, it's the one that, the Day of the Dead documentary that probably means the most to me, because it's the one that made me, like when I first saw that one, like when I got that Anchor Bay DiviMax DVD, the 2-disc DVD of Day of the Dead, that's the one where I was like, oh, like I kind of see what George was going for. And of course, George is in it, interviews with George and whatnot. It's really, really good. But to me, I had to leave it off because there's 10 other ones that and one that I'll bring up here in just a second. But I had to leave it off. But it's one that's near and dear to my heart and was my kind of real introduction to the world of Day of the Dead and the story behind Day of the Dead. And and of course you got, Lori Cardill and Joe Pilato is in that documentary. So, really, really good documentary, but, had to leave it out. But check it out. The Many Days of Day of the Dead, the OG Day of the Dead documentary. And there's another Day of the Dead documentary, which we'll be talking about here in just a second. Yeah, I think this is... I'm trying to make sure I got everything in order here. What I'm going to be talking about. Probably switch those around. Like I said, I'm still working on this fucking list. This top 10 list is ridiculous. But I think it's a good way to kind of lead into it. Rick said, I'm trying to find the DVD Blu-ray of Day of the Dead Anniversary Edition. So... This one came out a while back. This is a Anchor Bay where they kind of ported the transfer from the DVD to the Blu-ray to just 1080p. But there's a Scream Factory version as well, which is a different transfer. I believe it's a little better. It's a little uptick. It's got some more features and stuff on it. We'll talk about that here in a second. But I think both are kind of hard to find because even the Scream Factory ones, I think, out of print now, and you don't see too often. Rick says Bub is like the zombie Wilson of the Home Improvements peering over the neighbor's tree. He's like, hey, what about me? What about me? Paul says, Russ and Judy told me some great stories about vanilla at the last Living Dead weekend in Evans City a few years ago, and we all ate vanilla ice cream as well. Great night. Yeah, I remember that. That the last show they did in Evans City, and I missed that. I was still driving up. I had making the trip. I didn't get there in time to attend that There's Always Vanilla screening, the ice cream social or whatever, and I was looking forward to that one. I didn't get a chance to. But yeah, it was interesting hearing Judy talk about There's Always Vanilla in the documentary. I think I even think Larry is credited in it as helping with that documentary as well. But it was interesting hearing her take. She was like, I wish, looking back on it, I wish I could go back and do it again because I feel like I'd be a better actress now because, Judy really never did too much acting after There's Always Vanilla. I think that's pretty much it. She kind of got married to Russ and I think that was the end of her time. She was the secretary at Latent Image at the time. I think because after There's Always Vanilla, that's when Latent Image kind of split up. George went one way and Russ and John went another way, and they all kind of split off. And Judy, I don't think Judy ever did anything else after There's Always Vanilla. So it's kind of interesting hearing her say that she wishes she could go back or do another role now because she feels like she'd be a better actress. So, but I've always loved her, and she just had this like innocence, this innocence, and There's Always Vanilla that really worked, especially in juxtaposition with Ray Lane's character, who was just kind of this brash, young, cocky, like got the world by the balls kind of mentality, and just to see them play off of each other, it was just really reminiscent to a lot of relationships that I've been in. I'll say that. It's saying, yeah, many days holds great memories as well. The whole 2003, 2004, 2005 years were a great time in my life. Yeah, me too, man. And that was right around that time period. I think 2003 is when that DVD came out. And like I said, I wasn't the biggest Day of the Dead fan until I got that DVD and listened to the commentaries and watched that documentary and kind of, learned about, the whole backstory about Day of the Dead and how the original vision for Day of the Dead, they couldn't get the budget for and all that. So yeah, that documentary means a lot to me, and I just had to mention it. Didn't quite make the top 10 in terms of like my ultimate top 10 documentaries. But I think it's also, well, I'll talk about it here in a second, but Rick says, because 2025 is the 40th year anniversary of Day of the Dead, released in theaters in 1985. That's right, 40-year anniversary of Day of the Dead this year. 20th anniversary of Land of the Dead as well. And the 25th year anniversary of Bruiser. So that's worth celebrating, folks. That's worth celebrating. But yeah, I don't know. They're out there if you can find them. I think Mayor messaged me maybe about a week or so ago asking about this version. It's a fine version. I think you can find it for pretty cheap on eBay if you look. It's a good version to own. I mean, like it's fine. You get the audio commentary with George and Tom, Cletus Anderson, Laurie Cardill, the commentary with Roger Avery, the documentary behind the scenes, an audio interview with Richard Liberty, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with this. Like I said, there's a Scream Factory version that's out too, which the transfer may be a little bit better, but it's not a drastic change. I still say the best version of Day of the Dead that I've ever seen, picture quality wise, was the 35 millimeter open matte version that's on YouTube that I watched for Halloween last year. That thing looks fucking gorgeous. So, and who knows if or when we're ever going to get a 4K of it. So, but that brings us to number 10 on my list. I'll talk about both of these. I'm making this is the way I've kind of decided to kind of bring these together. To kind of lay out this top 10, because it's just fucking impossible to figure out what goes before what and where would I rank this. But number 10 on my list is The World's End, The Legacy of Day of the Dead, which was directed by our good buddy Michael Felsher. To me, this is it's included on this Scream Factory Blu-ray of Day of the Dead. And to me, it's the ultimate, like, it's the definitive documentary on Day of the Dead that you can get. I mean, I don't know if you can really do much better, because it includes interviews with a lot of the cast and a lot of the crew that's no longer with us. I mean, even Pilato, and I love listening to interviews with Joe Pilato, and Joe just gets in, like, if you get him going on, which they do at the end of the movie, they're all kind of reciting some of their lines and stuff from the movie, and Pilato just goes full blast, like, just really gets into it. But you got interviews with Joe Pilato, you got interviews with Gary Clark, you got interviews with Anthony DeLeo, a lot of the cast and crew that are no longer with us are included on this documentary, and it really goes in deep. Felsher is, and I guess we can go ahead and just talk about Felsher's style and the way that you can kind of see, like, I've seen so many of his documentaries at this point that I can pinpoint his style when I see it. Like, I totally get, like, oh, this is a Red Shirt Pictures documentary. Like, this is a Felsher film. Just his style, the way he lays out his documentaries. and I've always said, like, if Felsher is covering a Romero topic, a Romero film, like, that's the guy that you want to do it. Like, he's close friends with Romero when George was alive. He has close relationships with a lot of the Romero cast and crew. And yeah, it really doesn't get much better. Like, I love the many days of Day of the Dead, but it's like a 35, 40-minute long little documentary, and it works fine for what it is. But this one's like an hour and a half long feature-length documentary that covers Day of the Dead from its inception, covers each actor and their performance and their characters, and they kind of get into their motivation for the characters. And it's a real deep study into, the whole thing, and it goes into the production aspect. And you got interviews with George, you got interviews with, Tom Savini, of course. He got everybody, pretty much everybody on here. Now, some of them were missing, and he has talked about, because the Many Days of Day of the Dead was a David Gregory thing, and I think he worked on that as well. It wasn't his film, but he worked on it. And he said when he was doing World's End, I've heard him in some interviews, when he was doing this Day of the Dead documentary, he wanted to do something different. He wanted to kind of take it on a different type of, put a different spin on it, I guess. So he kind of tried to get some people that weren't included in that original documentary. And like I said, it's just a real deep dive. Like, it's the end all be all of Day of the Dead documentaries. I don't know what else they could do with it at this point. Because, I mean, you pretty much get everybody's point of view in here. Howard Sherman, Laurie Cardill, Terry Alexander. They didn't get Jarlath, though. I don't, unless I'm mistaken. Like I said, I just watched this not too long ago, but I've seen so many fucking Romero documentaries over the past couple of days, and I'm really burnt out. I can't remember what's on what, but I don't remember if they got Jarlath or not. I don't think they did. I think that was the big one that was missing out of this one. And I don't think Jarlath was included on the Many Days of Day of the Dead either. If I'm wrong, somebody correct me, but anytime that you get a Romero interview that Felsher is conducting, it's the best version of George, I think, in terms of like interviews for documentaries and stuff, because him and Felsher were so close, were such good friends that George just felt so relaxed, and George would kind of open up and tell different stories and kind of give you different takes than your usual Romero interview. Because a lot of the times, I've seen so many Romero interviews over the years that George kind of had a formula for a certain list of answers he would give to certain questions, because he would always get the same fucking questions all the time. It's like, what was it like making Night of the Living Dead? What was your inspiration for Dawn of the Dead? Do you. So he always had these, formulaic answers, which, it's fine. That pretty much every filmmaker, actor, movie star, whatever does. But when Felsher is interviewing George, Felsher is able to pull different things out of George, pull different emotions and different stories out of George. So you get a lot of that in this as well. I highly recommend World's End, The Legacy of Day of the Dead, or The Making of Day of the Dead. I think it's The Making of Day of the Dead is the actual title on the film. But I'll transition from 10 to 9 here, which is another Michael Felsher film, which to me is the end-all be-all of this film. And that is number 9, Just Desserts, The Making of Creepshow. Another definitive documentary on the making of Creepshow. George's one and only number one film at the box office. And again, it's another one that you can tell is a Felsher documentary, because you get George, there's interviews with George in it. And he got some interesting interviews with some folks that, like, you don't see a whole lot of in a lot of these documentaries. Like, Richard Rubenstein is interviewed in this, which is kind of cool, like a modern interview with Richard Rubenstein. Like, I think it may be one of the only times that you see like a modern Richard Rubenstein interview, but that's included on this. Nick Mastandrea is interviewed for this sucker. There's some really fun stories with like Nick Tallow, with the story. I don't know if you guys know the story about Nick Tallow, telling this girl that he was Hal Holbrook, or not telling the girl he was Hal Holbrook, but signing Hal Holbrook's autograph so the girl could take it back to his mom. And he's like, well, if your mom's okay with you coming and hanging out with me tonight, she can have Frank Sinatra's autograph for tomorrow. I don't give a fuck. But yeah, it's a really fun documentary, and it really, like I said, A to Z covers everything there is to know about Creepshow. From the score, which is another thing they covered in the Day of the Dead documentary at World's End, and this one has its own like single release here. This is from Synapse. I think you can probably find this for a pretty good price. But it's again, it's another hour and a half, 90-minute long documentary, full length feature film documentary on the making of Creepshow. But they get into John Harrison's interviewed on it. He's also included on the interview with Day of the Dead as well. And they really gets into like the scores and stuff, in which John Harrison was also working behind the scenes on Day of the Dead as an assistant director as well. So yeah, again, like Felsher's style, like it's you can kind of tell when Michael Felsher's working on a Romero film, or a documentary covering a Romero film, because the interviews are different, the kind of the answers are different, the stories vary, and people are a little more open to opening up about it, about their experiences working on it. There's some funny outtake footage in this from Ted Danson and Galen Ross from the Something to Tide You Over, where they're just cracking up and just bullshitting and joking, and it just makes it seem like you really get the feeling that Ted Danson had a really good time making Creepshow, but it's one of those films that he never talks about and has no interest in really talking about. That's what I've always heard, at least. Like, he's just kind of like, he doesn't really include it in his filmography or whatnot. But you see like a lot of the behind the scenes stuff on there, and it looks like him and Galen are just having a blast. Like, just, and when they're walking in, he's like, "Come down to the beach with us." And they're just kind of saying it over and over again. He's like, "You've already said that." Funny stuff. They talk about Leslie Nielsen and the fart machine. You get a lot of fart machine stories where Leslie Nielsen's got the little fart machine. It's fun hearing from Tom Atkins. Tom Atkins telling the story. He originally wanted to play the Jordy Verrill character in Creepshow, but Stephen King had already been cast for it, so instead he plays, the father in the wraparound story, and he was totally happy with that. But yeah, I mean, like I said, the definitive documentaries covering these two films, Just Desserts and At World's End, or I don't know if I think it's just The World's End or World's End, whatever. But Felsher, pretty much full-length feature film documentaries covering those. Interviews with George, you can't beat it. And when you get Felsher and George together, which we'll talk about, there's another one coming up later that I think a lot of you are going to be pretty surprised by. That it's so high on my list, but I will talk about it, and I'll tell you why. But yeah, anytime you get Felsher and George together, you get some really good stuff out of George, because George is just open to, the floodgates open. But what are you guys thinking? What do you think? So there's 10 and 9. So there's the first two right off the bat, Felsher's documentaries. And we may be talking about Felsher again here later, like I said. So what do you guys say? Let's see. Robert saying in the 35th anniversary of Night 90. That's right. Yes, that's right. 35 years. 35 years ago, Night 90. Hopefully we're getting that, 4K, new cut or whatever it's supposed to be of Night 90 this year at some point. I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing what it is, because I know the work print version's out there, and I think, me and Matt were talking about it, we were texting the other day talking about it. I know the work print version's out there. I hope it's not just a, restored version of that work print, but I don't know how they would do that anyway, because of the, the music rights and the copyright license and all that shit. So it's got to be something new, and that work print version is not 30% more of than what we got originally. There's like, there's some effects and stuff that were cut out, but it's not a drastically different version other than the music cues and some of the stuff like that. So I don't know. I'm still waiting to hear some more news or something on that one. That's something I've been hearing about in the works for, past few years. And I know Felsher's working on that one as well, because he's mentioned it. So I'm fully expecting like a definitive Night 90 documentary, retrospective documentary from Felsher as well. So, but I just don't know when to expect it. So, Rick says yes, the YouTube version of Day of the Dead is pretty high quality. Yeah, there is like I said, I like the It's the 35 millimeter open matte version that was posted not too long ago. That's probably the best looking version, but there is a 4K upres version of Day of the Dead on YouTube as well that looks pretty damn good. So I mean, it's out there. But I don't know if we're gonna ever get a official release, like a restoration from like the original camera negative or anything, because there's still that whole thing about, you know, whether the camera negative's gone missing or whatever. Nobody really knows what happened to it or where it's at. So that's another one that's still kind of up in the air. So. And speaking of Romero Documentaries, what's up, Brandon? Brandon Salisbury's in the house. What's going on, man? Good to have you in here. And any conversation about Romero Documentaries, like, this is a guy to talk to. Like, he's fucking done one. So he knows more about what it's all about than any of us. So, and Brandon says Michael Felcher does amazing documentaries across a lot of films. He has. I mean, I've learned so much. Like, a lot of my knowledge and a lot of my love for these films have come from watching Felcher's documentaries. Before I even knew who the fuck Michael Felcher was. Like I was talking earlier about, you know, a lot of the audio commentaries that Felcher did for the Anchor Bay back in the day, because that's where he worked at the time, was Anchor Bay, doing a lot of the interviews and bonus features for those. And that's, you know, so like I remember when I met Felcher for the first time at a Living Dead weekend, he was sitting there with John Harrison. And of course, I was meeting John Harrison for the first time, so I was like, holy shit, John Harrison, like, huge fan. Like, Tales from the Dark Side of the movie is what, like, got me started loving all this shit. Like, I would not be here right now without that movie. And Felcher's just sitting there, and I was like, and Felcher, I just want to let you know, like, your movies have changed my life too. Like, I'm a huge fan of you. Like, your documentaries, like, before I even knew who the fuck you were, like, I was watching those on repeat. And he was just like, oh, wow, thank you. And Harrison was like, see, you got fans too. He's like, oh, yeah, right. But yeah, love Felcher's stuff. And I know Felcher for sure has some stuff that he's never released that I would give my left nut to take in, watch, hear, whatever. I mean, so. Let's see where we at. Ed says, Shin, Rubenstein, or none of the Hassanines did the Day or even Dawn documentaries. Well, that's true, yeah. That's interesting, because I would love to have heard something from Salah Hassanine, or even some of the kids. Like, I know Larry's been in contact with one of the, I can't remember which one it is, but one of the Hassanine kids. I know he's been in contact with him here recently. So I don't know. I'd love to hear some stories or some recollections from their end of things, because we always get, you know, the story like, oh, you know, Salah Hassanine would, especially with Day of the Dead, when he's like, oh yeah, we'll give you $7 million to do the original version of Day of the Dead, but you know, it has to be R-rated, and that whole thing. So I'd love to get his take on that, and what his mentality was, and thoughts and stuff were, which I'm pretty sure he's still around. Salah Hassanine's still around, guys. Anybody know in the chat? But even his sons, I mean, his sons were working on there. I know for sure they were, what was his name? I can't think of the kid's name, but one of the, Richard Hassanine maybe, was working on, Night Riders. I think he was on the Night Riders set a lot. So yeah, those would be some names I'd love to hear more from, for sure. And honestly, I think Richard at that point was more hands off by the time they got to Day of the Dead. So I don't know how much, like, I know Richard is the producer of Day of the Dead and all that, like, but I don't think he was on set all that much. I think that was more of a Dave Ball thing. Dave Ball was really more of kind of the producer, like, you know, keeping the wheels rolling, as he says, and in the many days of Day of the Dead documentaries, like, he has walking around with the oil can, making sure everything's going, you know. Richard, I think at that point was more the office guy, like trying to get Laurel, because Laurel had gone public by that point, so he was on to he had bigger fish to fry, I guess. You know, he was, you know, the Tales from the Dark Side TV series, like, he had a lot more things going on from a business standpoint than actually being on set. But yeah, anytime I've any chance to get it to hear from Richard Rubenstein is one that I'm always interested in taking in, for sure, because the man's kind of a mystery to us. Like, there's interviews and he's talked before and stuff. And there's the commentary on Dawn that he does on the extended version of Dawn, but you don't hear too much from him. He's a pretty private guy. Robert said Michael Felsher is the best. I agree. Like I said, anything he works on, it's going to be quality. It's an only thing I would have liked to add would be John Harrison discussing the score of Daymore. Well, he does discuss it. He is included on World's End, where he's discussing, mainly talking about how people hate the fucking score, and he's just like, well, I think people have kind of come around to it a little more over the years, but at the time, people were just not. They wanted a more, I guess, like straight ahead basic horror score, and I got all these Caribbean vibes and stuff. And they were talking because he scored it, because Pat Booba, I think in the documentary, George says, me and Pat were up on the 5th floor at 247 Fort Pitt Boulevard editing the movie, and we would get something edited together, and we would send it down to the 1st floor, which is where John was working at the time on his keyboard, and he'd send it down, and he would just score it right there, and it would just go back and forth. So yeah, there's some good stuff with Harrison and Day of the Dead for sure. John says, don't have just desserts, should pick it up at some point. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And honestly, like I was saying a minute ago, it originally was released on this UK 2007 release, this DVD release of Creepshow. This is where Just Desserts first made an appearance. Then it got its own Blu-ray release from Synapse, and I'd like to see them do something similar. I know Felsher and Red Shirt Pictures are kind of branching off and doing some bigger things now. They just, he just did the Trick or Treat 4K. I know they got like Fright Night 2 coming out, Prom Night 2, quite a few big titles in the pipeline. So the man's cooking. But just like with Just Desserts, I would love to see a World's End full documentary, single release on Blu-ray for sure. Maybe some bonus features and some extra footage and stuff. Because there's a lot of bonus extra stuff that's not included on this one. That's in the documentary. There's, full-length interviews and extended interview segments and all kinds of good stuff on these. So I'd love to see a single release of World's End at some point too. John says, I like the Bomba calls her a real tomato. Yeah, real tomato. I'm still unsure what that means. Ugly, gorgeous, dumb. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's like she was a real tomato. I guess it's a good thing. Juicy, maybe? Juicy, plump? Maybe. If that's his thing, I don't know. Maybe that's his thing. She was a real tomato. Robert says, I hate the ego of some actors who are ashamed of talking about working in horror movies. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he's ashamed of it or if he just really doesn't think too much about it. I don't know, but I've never heard Ted Danson talk about Creepshow. But I don't know why. Like I said, even in the footage that's in the documentary, the behind the scenes stuff, it looks like he's having a blast. And I've heard maybe that he has some resentment because they, the whole having him buried up to his neck thing, like he wasn't a big fan of that. But, it wasn't like they actually buried him in the fucking sand. I mean, it was a fake thing. It was he was sitting in a chair and it was a floor there and they just put a little sand around it to make it look like he was buried, but he wasn't actually buried. But I don't know. I don't know what the story with Ted Danson is, but I mean, I'd love to hear from him at some point, but I don't think he's too interested in talking about it. Michael, what's going on, Michael? Michael Rashpaul's in the house. Did anyone watch Midnight Madness from the margins to the mainstream? I don't think I've heard of that. It details Night of the Living Dead and its impact on midnight movies, independent cinema, and cult classics. Romero was in it. No, I'll have to check that out. I don't think I've ever... What year is this? Is this recent? I guess it's not recent if Romero's in it. But is it like fairly recent, or is it like an older kind of documentary from the 90s or maybe 80s? I'm going to write that down real quick so I don't forget the title. Midnight Madness. Because, yeah, I've never even heard of that. Be very interesting to check out. Thanks for the heads up on that, my man. Robert said, I believe one day we will get a 4K of Day of the Dead. I just hope it's in my lifetime. I'm sure it will. I'm sure it's out there somewhere. So yeah, it's coming. I'm when, I don't know. You would think, like, if there was a year to put it out, it would be this, 40th anniversary, the special 40th anniversary 4K release. But I don't think, it doesn't look like it's happening this year, but maybe someday. Rob said I just started rewatching Tales from the Dark Side TV show. It's great. You can get it on DVD, the complete series, for cheap. Yeah, I picked up. I have that whole box set, the complete series. I think it was like $15 or something like that. And it's got a Romero commentary on the first episode, Trick or Treat. It's kind of interesting to hear his recollections because he wrote that version, or wrote that story. So yeah, you can find it for pretty cheap if you can find it. Robert says, one of the things I love about George is that he always worked with his friends. Besides Sam Raimi, I can't think of many who have that kind of loyalty. Yeah, and I think, and this kind of gets to a documentary we can talk about here in a little bit, but I think that's why George ended up moving to Toronto and making his films in Canada after a while, because Pittsburgh, all his friends had left. Like, they'd all gone to Hollywood. The Pittsburgh film scene wasn't what it used to be. So you had like Nick Mastandrea and, Pat Booba and those guys went to Hollywood and a lot of the guys, like Tom wasn't doing effects really anymore after, the early 90s. And so George still wanted to make movies, and he wanted to make movies with a crew that he could trust, of people that he, and he did that up in Canada. And a lot of the people that he worked with throughout that whole run, from Bruiser all the way to Survival of the Dead. So George always wanted that family atmosphere, and loved the comfort of kind of everybody in an inner circle on the set, where it's easier to work with, I guess. And George didn't play well with, some of the outsiders that he would work with in his career, like the DP on Dark Half, and there's stories out there, but that's always been the thing that appealed to me, really, was that whole idea of, like, especially Night of the Living Dead. It's like, oh, let's all get together and make a movie type of thing, and then what's up, Jeff? Down is up. It's in the house. What's going on, man? Michael, everyone in the chat. Good to see you, my man. 2005. Okay, so yeah, I'll have to hunt that down. That must have slipped under my radar. But yeah, I got Midnight Madness. I'll check it out for sure. Robert said, yes, I listened to that Romero commentary of that episode last night. There you go. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I love that episode, too. It's a hell of a first episode. And Trish Tallman from Night 90 is the witch in that episode. So I thought that was pretty cool. And you can tell that's a Romero story. It's so Romero. It's like so anti-capitalist. The poor man wins in the end type of thing. The blue collar rises again type of thing. Just it was a great episode of Tales. Yeah, it really was. Great way to open. Fun one to watch on Halloween, too, for sure. And a great concept. The idea that there's this rich old guy who just loves he gets off on just scaring the absolute shit out of all the kids in the neighborhood, just for no other reason than just because he loves it. There's something kind of wholesome about that, but then it takes a weird turn into like a David Lynch type of ending, which is kind of cool. So I don't know. I do love that episode. It's a great episode. Perp said, I really wish I knew about George before Land of the Dead in a much bigger way. I feel like I've missed so much. Well, yeah, man, like Land of the Dead was the first thing that I saw. I didn't know about George until like the late 90s. I mean, I was just too young to really experience a lot of his stuff from the 70s and 80s. And then, you go back and watch it later. But yeah, Land was the first thing I saw in theaters. And Romero-wise, it was the first Romero film I saw in theaters. So yeah, I'm kind of right there with you, man. Steven says, Midnight Madness, great documentary about midnight movies. Just FYI, not focused fully on Romero, but a great documentary nevertheless. Also, if you haven't seen any of the featured movies, and learning. Yeah, I mean, I love watching shit like that. So yeah, it's definitely something I'd be interested in. And anything with Romero in it, I like to watch, like to check it out. But yeah, I somehow missed that over the years. Definitely check that out. Yeah, absolutely, Synth. Yep, a bigger version of Let's Put on a Show. Yeah, that absolutely. Um, Robert says, thanks for that information, Mike. I didn't know that she was the witch. That's so cool. Yeah, yeah. Stuntman Patty Tallman. Or stunt woman Patty Tallman, excuse me. I'd say my favorite Dark Side was The Odds with Tom Noonan and Danny Aiello. That may be my favorite too. That is a fantastic episode. And who wasn't that a John Harrison episode? I think wasn't John Harrison the director on that one? I can't remember. I did a little series of the first season of Tales from the Dark Side a couple of years ago, and I do remember that one was like really really good. Most of them were really good. There was like one or two stinkers in that first season that were just kind of like but for the most part, yeah, it's a hell of a show. There's just Robert saying there's just something about him. I could listen to him talk for hours on end. I can't think of many directors I could say that about. Yeah, I mean, trust me, I'm with you, man. I have listened to him talk for hours on end the past couple of days, catching up on going back and watching all these documentaries. So, weird you mentioned The Odds because it's literally the next episode. Yeah, I think you'll like it, man. It's a really good episode. It's a really good one. Since Ann Tallman was great as the witch. Yeah, she was the witch in Army of Darkness too. Yeah, that's right. Trish Tallman's done a lot in her career. Like you really wouldn't even know it or recognize her unless you were really looking for her either. But all right, let's get back to this countdown here. And this is another one. It's kind of a three. I'm gonna do these next three in order because they all kind of. I didn't really know how to rank these because they're all three of these are fantastic. But they're all good in their own different ways. They all have different positives and different negatives, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But number 8 on my list. This is a documentary that I just watched for the first time. Finally picked it up. Just watched it for the first time maybe a week or so ago. And it's Autopsy of the Dead, directed by Jeff Carney, produced by Jim Serenella. It's a 2.5 hour long documentary. I'll go ahead. I'm going to give you 8, 7, and 6 right now because they're all Night of the Living Dead documentaries, and they're all great for different reasons. In really no particular order. But number 8, Autopsy of the Dead. Number 7, this is one that we talked about not too long ago that I just picked up that I'm a huge, huge fan of. And it's Birth of the Living Dead, directed by Rob Coons. So I put that at 7, and then at 6, originally included on the 40th anniversary DVD edition of Night of the Living Dead, is One for the Fire, directed by Rob Lucas and Chris Rowe. So I just put all these right in a row together because they're all, in terms of Night of the Living Dead, these 3 documentaries cover it all in different ways. As I mentioned before, I'll do them in order of like, if I was recommending these for people that have not seen, that like Night of the Living Dead, but they haven't seen any of the documentaries, don't really know too much about them, I would watch them in this order. I'd go Birth of the Living Dead first. Like I said, Birth of the Living Dead is the perfect introduction to Romero, Night of the Living Dead. Like it's a macro look at Night of the Living Dead. What it has meant to society. It's looking at it in the big picture kind of look at it. But it's also got some great stories. There's great interviews with George Romero. Like George is having a blast in this interview. It wasn't a Felcher interview, but it feels like it. Like he's just kind of relaxed and kind of cutting up, telling these funny stories, talking about Vince Stravinsky building the bridge. And Vince was like, yeah, I'll build a bridge. I'm like, all right, Vince. And then I'll be goddamned. I come in the next day. He's built the fucking bridge. But it's, and like I said, my personal experience with this documentary is what kind of piqued my fiance's interest in Romero when we watched, because I had showed her the movies and she was like, oh yeah, it's good. I like it. It's fine. It's not her thing, but it's whatever. And then we watched this documentary, and she was like, "Oh, I get it now. I totally get why you love George and why you like this movie. Like, I get it." So this is the perfect starter. Birth of the Living Dead. It's kind of hard to find. You can find the Blu-ray. It's not cheap. This is I guess this is a UK release. As you can see, it's a Region 2 release, Region B release. But I would go Birth of the Living Dead first, kind of get what Night has meant to the world of horror and what it meant, and just kind of get the whole story. They really get into doing. It's a lot of interviews and conversations with fans and film review, like film scholars and shit, where it's a little hoity-toity at times from some of these people, where it's but at the same time, like it's really really well made, and will, if you're showing somebody asked, I think it was on one of the streams, what, just talking about like what movies would you show that someone new that you're trying to introduce to Romero for the first time. That this would be a perfect documentary to introduce somebody to Night of the Living Dead, and kind of because there's animations to it, kind of animating a lot of the stories that are being told in terms of like the making of Night of the Living Dead, and how living at the farmhouse and all that. Like there's great stories, and there's pretty cool animations. It's a really digestible documentary for the beginner. Not that if you're not deep in the fucking weeds like we are, and you're just trying to show somebody like, oh, this is why I like this movie, and this is why I like this filmmaker. Like it's perfect start right here. It's Birth of the Living Dead. Then I would go One for the Fire documentary, and this came out 2008. I believe, because I think this came out later in the same year, the 40th anniversary, after I had met the whole cast and everything. One for the Fire would be next. I love this documentary. And again, it's George having a blast. There's interviews with George, there's interviews with Rudy Ritchie. It's one of the only interviews on one of these documentaries that I can recall with Rudy Ritchie. And you get to hear all the stories about how he met George in college, like the first day of freshman year at Carnegie Mellon, and the birth of the latent image. You get John Russo, Russ Striner's interview, and then really kind of talks all the way up through. And then there's it intermingles with some like shorter segments with like Bill Cardille. There's one with Chili Billy. It's like a couple minutes long. Ella May, who else? Reed Cervinsky, George Casana. So it goes back and forth. It's kind of telling the story of the making of Night of the Living Dead, but at the same time, it's interspersed with these outlier characters, outlier, smaller parts, I guess, or whatnot. But it does a great job telling the story of Night of the Living Dead. Just in terms, it's a story that could be told, and it will be told in a second with a 2.5 hour long deep dive. But it does a great job of kind of condensing it. And this is one, it's like an hour and 15 minutes or something like that. It's a feature-length documentary. It's one that Felsher worked on as well, but again, like I said, was directed by Robert Lucas and Chris Rowe, which I think Chris Rowe was George's manager at the end of his career, I believe, if I remember correctly. I think that's who that was. But yeah, you get interviews with a lot of people that are no longer with us. That it's one of the only like Carl Hardman, Marilyn Eastman. You get interviews with them where they're talking about And one of the best parts in this documentary is hearing Carl talk about Dwayne Jones, and he kind of gets teary-eyed and gets a little choked up talking about Dwayne and how much he loved Dwayne and what a special, not just an actor, but just a special, unique person that Dwayne Jones was. That's one of the highlights of this. Another highlight is listening to George tell the story of meeting Rudy Ritchie and meeting all the guys and learning about young George in the late 50s and the early 60s, before they had really started the company, and they were just kind of college kids hanging out, and George would get into a movie real big and kind of just play the role. He'd come out in costume, and the story of them going to Dairy Queen, and then the girl at Dairy Queen refused to serve him because she thought because George was all like in a fucking sombrero and mustachio and stuff, and he was really into, I forget what movie it was, but he was really into a certain movie. Really great stories. It's really, really entertaining documentary. It had been a while. I just watched this again today for the first time in quite a while. It had been a while since I'd gone back and rewatched One for the Fire, and it'd been so long that I'd kind of thought like, oh, do I want to include that on the top 10? Like, I'm not sure. But watching it again today, I was like, no, like this is where, because this is really the first documentary that I can think of that went into like a deep dive. And it goes, by the end they're talking about the copyright issue where Russ and John Russo are back at 247 Fort Pitt Boulevard, and they're down in the basement telling the story about, the flood wiping out all the film and shit. It does a really good job going into like some of the deeper aspects of the making of Night of the Living Dead and the legacy of it, and like I said, you get George's take on it, and Carl and Marilyn and George Casana. Like George Casana's his little segment's interesting because it's only like 2 minutes long, and it ends with him with his rifle, and it's like makes no sense, but it's just like he's standing at the bridge from the filming location. And he's like, Night of the Living Dead is like this rifle. It's timeless. And I forget what else he says, but then he like fires it, and it's just like, okay, I think he just wanted to hold his rifle for the movie. I think that's all that was. But really fun, really good. I think this is also included. There's a Blu-ray release of this as well. It's from Dimension Extreme. For those of you guys who remember Dimension Extreme, I don't think they're still around anymore, but yeah, highly recommend checking it out. One for the Fire. The Legacy of Night of the Living Dead, I guess is what it's called. And then once you've taken in Birth of the Living Dead, and you've taken in One for the Fire, and you really want to dig in deep, and you really want to dig into the minutia of Night of the Living Dead, Autopsy of the Dead is where you go after that. This has got interviews with every fucking body else. Like, the interesting thing about this one, and one thing I will say I forgot to mention, he's included in this one as well, but this One for the Fire is also my introduction to Gary Striner. I didn't know who Gary Striner was until I saw this documentary, because he was just kind of a name that I'd never, like, I didn't meet him at the convention earlier that year in Dallas at Texas Frightmare Weekend for the 40th anniversary reunion. And he wasn't really named that he wasn't in any of the audio commentaries from the Elite Laserdisc years before. Wasn't a name I really knew too much about until this documentary. He was featured in this documentary, and One for the Fire, and he's also featured in this documentary as well. And everybody, like, there's the thing about Autopsy of the Dead. There's no interviews with George. There's nothing with Russo. There's nothing with Russ. It really bypasses like pretty much the people that tell their story in this. They go past that, and then you get into the deeper cuts of Night of the Living Dead, and you get the recollections of people like Chuck Craig, like Charles Craig starts the documentary out, and you really get his story, and then you get Bill Cardille, you hear his full story, and just the most random assortment of people, like Dave James, rest in peace, we just lost. He has a segment on there. It's kind of like this full, and like I said, it's 2.5 hours long. It's as much of a deep dive as you can get into Night of the Living Dead. Rick Catazone. I'd have to look at just the whole list of people because I forget off the top of my head of who all they interviewed for this. But it's pretty much anybody and everybody that was involved in Night of the Living Dead gets a segment in this and gets to tell their story. So that would be mine. Like I said, I had just seen this for the first time. I'd missed this for years. Up until here recently, until a couple of weeks ago. I finally got it on eBay for good price. I was like, I'm picking it up. I got to watch it. And I know Synth. I think Synth just watched it for the first time here recently too, and mentioned maybe doing a full stream, kind of breaking it down, and talking about it in full. Because like I said, there's a lot here. There's a lot to take in. They interviewed the helicopter pilot. I mean, it's just like any and everybody, and you come to expect that type of thing when you see Jim Cerinella's name attached to this. You're like, okay, this is the documentary that you're really going to dig in deep with. So if you want everything you've ever wanted to know about Night of the Living Dead, Birth of the Living Dead, One for the Fire, and then last but not least, Autopsy of the Dead. Excuse me. I think that's the first time I've ever sneezed on a live stream. But I was smart enough to hit that mute button so you guys didn't get grossed out. But yeah, that's your trifecta right there. And there's other good Night of the Living Dead documentaries out there. Chronicles of the Living Dead is another one that's out there. But I would say those three are in my opinion, the definitive three to watch in that order, and you will get like pretty much the whole story like of Night of the Living Dead, everything there is to know. So yeah, there's three right there. So we did what, 8, 7, and 6. So what do you guys think? Fans of those documentaries? Did I miss any? Would you guys have included Chronicles of the Living Dead more so? I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me scroll back up here to the top where I left off. Okay, Robert saying I can't find Autopsy of the Dead anywhere. Do you know where I can get it on physical media? It's only available on DVD. I don't think there's a Blu-ray of it quite yet. But it does pop up on eBay from time to time. I got mine, picked it up not too long ago, probably a couple weeks ago. Found it was $15 on eBay. But there's a lot of good stuff on this. A lot of good stuff. So yeah, I would keep an eye on eBay. They pop up on eBay every now and then. If you're ever in Pittsburgh, if you ever go to the Monroeville Mall, I do know they have quite a few copies at the Living Dead Museum as well. But that's why it took me forever. I was in the same boat, Robert. That's why it took me forever to finally watch this sucker myself, because it's not readily available. It's not everywhere. You're not going to find it at your local FYE or whatever. It's kind of a rare one. So I keep an eye on eBay, and if you're ever at the Living Dead Museum, they have copies there as well. Since the season 1 episode of Tales with the Grandpa Refusing to Die was fun. Oh, I hated that one with young Christian Slater. That's one that I just did not get. Like, that's the one I didn't like. I forget who directed that one, but yeah, that was not a favorite of mine. Great makeup by Ed French, features young Brent Spiner and Christian Slater. Yeah, I do remember that makeup, Ed French talking about that one and something. I can't remember what it was, but it was yeah, I didn't care for that one personally. But since I just bought Autopsy on eBay, brand new but getting harder to find, nice dog. Absolutely. Yeah, keep an eye on eBay. You never know what the fuck's gonna pop up on eBay at any point in time. Jeff loves that episode, so I guess I'm in the minority here. I don't know, maybe. John says Chris Rowe, George's old manager, heard a lot of stories, but Autopsy was done in reaction to One for the Fire for the real trolls. There you go. You've heard Russo and Russ a million times, but Hartman, Ella May has a small role or a small segment in One for the Fire too, but it's just kind of like her usual, sitting out in the yard having a sweet tea after work, and they come walking up asking if I wanted to be in a movie, and my husband said no, and I said, yeah, we do. Love Ella May. She's super fucking cool, but yeah, I mean, that's exactly what Autopsy is. It goes where One for the Fire left off, and then takes you deeper into the abyss of Night of the Living Dead. I highly recommend all three. John says, also there was no actual bridge. It was a piece of wood over a little water, not anything major. Interesting. Well, George made it out like fucking... Well, I mean, they all talk... And that's another thing. I want to give a shout out to Vince Ravinsky, because that's another thing watching all these documentaries. Everybody has nothing but the best things to say. And there's a segment in Autopsy of the Dead where Reed is talking about his brother Vince. And just, I mean, Vince was the guy that did everything. Like, would just make shit happen. Like, and George has said that, Russo has said that, Russ, like, they all have nothing but the best things to say about Vince Ravinsky. Like, if they needed something done, Vince would get it done. And there was also a comment in that documentary too. I forget who, it may have been Regis, who kind of made this little backhand comment. Lighting died. Oh, there we go. Got to light up that back there. But he kind of made this little backhand comment. He didn't mention any names or really point to who he was talking about, but he was like, on the set, there were quite a few guys who would just kind of stand around and just wait to be told what to do and really wouldn't, but Vince was always like right in there, like getting shit done. So I was like, who the hell is he talking about? That was, because I mean, he wasn't just saying like just random people that were on the set. He was like people that were heavily involved in shooting the film. That's the way he made it seem, at least, that were just kind of lollygagging around the set most of the time, not wanting to get their hands dirty type of thing. So I thought that was an interesting quote there from Reg in Autopsy. Brandon says, I really liked Birth of the Living Dead. Yeah, I mean, it's a really fun documentary. Like I said, perfect starter documentary for anybody that's new to the world of Romero, the world of Night of the Living Dead. And like I said, it's the perfect start there, One for the Fire, Autopsy of the Dead, and you're covered. By the end of Autopsy of the Dead, like I said, Autopsy of the Dead is 2.5 hours long. And that's one thing too. It's like, I love this shit, and even by like the 2 hour mark, I was like, it's getting a little tedious. It's like, we could probably narrow this down a little bit, but at the same time, it's like, I'm gonna watch it multiple times just because there's so much information in that from so many different people and so many stories that it's Bill Heinzman's interviewed in it. He's got some great stuff. But yeah, all three are really, really good, and like I said, in different ways. Robert says, Birth of the Living Dead is good. Just watched it again like a month ago. There you go. Although I have heard some people that were just like, Birth of the Living Dead, it's like, it's a bunch of people that know nothing about the movie talking about the movie, and it's like, yeah, kind of, but again, it's like a macro look at Night of the Living Dead. It's it's not, the real hardcore Night fans that are talking about it. It's more of like the people that are looking at it in more of an academic lens, I guess, at times. Or looking at it was like what it meant in society at the time, like what was going on in society at the time that reflected in Night of the Living Dead, which I'm always all about. Like, I'm always cool with that, but Paul says, One for the Fire was such a comfortable watch. Interesting way to put it. I did feel that as well. And I love the scene. It's one of my favorite lines that George has ever said in anything, any interview or anything ever. And he's like, it's just like me and my buddies, we're just going around making these little movies and just having a blast and just kind of blowing off school and blowing off, work and all that. And we're just hanging out and having a blast. And he was like, I was thinking there for a while, like, is this real life? Like, could this be real life? And in fact, it was. Like, it can be. Like, and I've always loved that line from Romero. And you can kind of see Romero kind of getting a little choked up when he's saying that too. It's kind of true. Like, that's, if I don't know, like, that's the dream, just you and your buddies making things happen and making a living doing it. It's kind of what, that's kind of how he looked at the Latent Image back in the day. Said you almost feel like you're in the room hanging and chatting with the gang. Yeah. And again, those are the best, like, especially with George. Like, if George, and you can kind of tell sometimes in some of these interviews where George maybe has had, a Johnny Walker or two. He's a little loose and he's a little goofy at times, but I do love it for that reason. I totally get what you're saying. We're saying, was that Image 10? Are you talking about Autopsy of the Dead? I don't think this was. So I don't think this was officially an Image 10. It says 0 day releasing. So no, I don't think this is an Image 10 related thing, but yeah, I don't see it on there anywhere. So I don't think so. I don't think they were quite at that point when that came out, because Autopsy came out. So we're looking timeline wise. One for the Fire was the first one to come out. That was like 2008, like I said. Let's see, Birth of the Living Dead's 2014. Autopsy was 2009. So there you go. That's interesting. You kind of get Autopsy was the response to One for the Fire. I get that. I get that. Robert said George kind of looked like a stud back in the day, didn't he? Yeah, I mean, they were all. I mean, they were all pretty good-looking characters back in the day, if you ask me. I think they all had their looks. Let's see, Ed saying One for the Fire would be good for an independent release with maybe an extra or extended cut and extras. Yeah, I would love, and I've heard Felsher talk about that before in the past in interviews where he's talked about like One for the Fire, because he edited that movie. He didn't direct it, but he was the editor on that one. And he's talked about how he was never pleased with the final product. Like he felt like he could go back, because there was a lot that he cut out that he would love to have kept in. Excuse me. But there's a lot that he would like to go back and put back in. And he's talked about like wanting to do maybe a single release and doing a re-edit of that, because he just was never satisfied with the final product. So maybe at some point, somewhere down the road, but I'd be all for that. Justin Moreno, what's going on, man? Crack open that Iron City. Well, I've already got one cracked open here, my man. I might have to crack open another one here in a second, but good to see you, sir. John said pretty much interviews everyone that was in the credits still alive. Just missed finding Paula. That's right, Paula. I was thinking that too. Paula Richards not included in Autopsy, and of course it was pre Sharon Carroll too. But yeah, I mean it's literally any and everybody that you could think of that was in the credits that hadn't been interviewed yet. But there's some great behind the scenes. There's a lot of really good behind the scenes stuff in this too. Some photos and definitely worth checking out just for that alone. Yeah. It says Autopsy was cool. Damn, no sneeze sample to use. Yeah, I couldn't just sneeze, and I know I cough every now and then, but I can't just sneeze all over the damn microphone. That would just be rude. Brandon says I really like chasing zombies, getting cool stories from some of the zombies across George's films. Mike Anka did a great job putting together a doc that allows the zombies to talk about the movies. I did too. I enjoyed it as well. My biggest issue with chasing zombies, though, is the wraparound stuff with the film school kids or the makeup effects. I think they were Tom Savini school students. I felt like that just kind of slowed everything down. It's like I'm getting into it, and then all of a sudden it cuts to this stuff that I'm just not, I don't care about, honestly. Like, it's just, I get it. Like, I get what they were going for with it, but that just kind of slowed the pace for me. Like, it just kind of, it was a little all over the place, but yeah, that's another good one, Chasing Zombies. That's one that just came out. I've only seen it once, so maybe that's one that'll climb the list one of these days, as well as yours. I mean, the Resident Evil documentary, that would almost made the top 10 just for like this, for sentimental reasons alone. Like just the fact that I fucking shed tears at the end of that. I was like, damn. But yeah, Chasing Zombies is a good one. Since the scene breakdowns then and now for Night and Autopsy were worth the price of the DVD alone. There you go. Yeah, a lot of location stuff on that as well. That's really, really well done. Hey, what's up, Stukas? Stukas Dives in the house. Is FYE still a store? I don't think so. We had one here in Evansville that just closed here, and it was one of the last ones that I could even recall in this area, at least. So I don't know. I think they're pretty much belly up. So, but that was kind of my go-to place back in the day. That's where I bought a lot of DVDs in my younger years. Was FYE, Sam Goody, yeah. Pretty much every place that is no longer in existence. That was my jam back in the day. Robert said, I just found a Living Dead documentary website that has it for $18.99. Hope it's legit. Oh, website's out of commission. Yeah, that's probably the same one I tried to order it from initially, too. The actual autopsyofthedead.com, which is still up, and there's still like a thing to order, to order the movie, and that's where I was going to order it through, but it's no longer a working link. It's like, okay, I guess that makes sense. It is that website did come out, what did I say, 2009? So yeah, 16 years ago. So I'm not surprised, but Robert saying, when will George Romero's Resident Evil come out on physical media? That's a good question. I think Brandon's got an answer here. It says it'll be this fall. There should be announcements coming, but the ink is still wet on the deal. Awesome. Look forward to it. I bought it on Amazon, so I still have it on Amazon. I can watch it whenever. But that's definitely one you got to get on physical media for sure. Which I think did it just come out on Blu-ray in Germany, I believe, if I remember correctly? Because I think I've seen those pop up on eBay here recently. Could be wrong. Could be a bootleg. I'm not sure. Brandon saying there's much better docs than mine, more than 10 ahead of me. Yeah, I mean, but dude, yours is up there. Yours is covering a topic that's not typically covered. So that it's new. You're treading new ground. And like I said, the ending of that documentary just tore me up. Like talking about George's death. And it's kind of, I think it's the only documentary that really got into it that deep that's come out since his passing, that I can remember off the top of my head. But so yeah, I mean it's one that I really enjoyed. But yeah, like I said, this was the hardest top 10 to friggin' whittle down. Like doing the top 10 non-Romero zombie movies and all the other top 10s that I've done were 10 times easier than trying to whittle down this documentary list, which is why I pulled out 2 earlier that were just honorable mentions, because I was like, I just want to talk about these 2, these got to have some kind of mention. Paul says, I think I'm in Chasing Zombies for a second or two, still need to track it down. Contact Mike Ankus or Larry. Larry might even have a couple of copies still. That's where I got mine from, and I had Larry sign it. I was like, to a far out fan. Send it to me, Larry. And he did. But yeah, email Mike Ankus. You can probably find him on Facebook or something like that. I'm pretty sure he's still got copies out there. I know Jeannie Jeffries, I think, still has copies. So they're out there. Definitely check it out. Paul says we'll most definitely pick up Resident Evil on physical media. Yeah, that's an obvious buy. And when I get it, Brandon, when I see you at Living Dead Weekend, if it comes out before then, well, I doubt it probably will. Living Dead Weekend's a lot closer than I think, but I'm going to need to get it signed at some point, Brandon, so just saying. Robert's saying, through which label will I be able to get it on Amazon, or do I need to go elsewhere? So Robert's trying to get Brandon to break some news tonight. We'll see. And Stuke is saying Charlotte had a sweet store in the 90s called Manifest Discs. Used random music and movies you would never know about if the internet didn't exist. That's where I found Tetsuo the Iron Man. Oh, yeah, there's still some pretty cool little stores like that. Some little mom and pop media stores, record stores, Blu-rays and shit like that. But yeah, I think like the big chain, like I said, the FYEs and the Sam Goodies, and I think those are pretty much dying out. Which sucks, but at the same time, the prices at those stores, they couldn't compete with Amazon or just buying shit directly from the label, or like Orbit DVD or Diabolic or any of those places. Because you like that FYE that just closed here in Evansville, they had the Two Evil Eyes 4K, and I was like, I really want to pick that up. And I look, and it's like $70. I was like, no fucking way. Like all their shit was like that. It was just so expensive. I don't know why, but Springsteen is through a rather well-known physical media company. Beyond that, I can't say anything. So Vinegar Syndrome release of Resident Evil, George A. Romero's Resident Evil, coming soon. No, that's good to hear, man. Congratulations on that. I'm curious to see what label's going to do it. I think it, whether it's a Vinegar Syndrome or a Severin, Synapse would be a good one. I don't know. That's interesting. But congratulations on that, man. Hell yeah. All right. So let's get to my top 5. Now, honestly, the top 5 for me was pretty easy. Was pretty settled. I'm about to lose my voice, guys, so you're going to have to give me a second. Like I said, I'm a little rusty. It's been over a week since I've done one of these, so let's crack open an iron. Let's do another one tonight. What the hell? But yeah, the top 5 for me was fairly easy because all 5 of these, love them to death, seen them a billion times, and they're all unique in their own little ways. But this first, number 5, this is a weird one. Okay, this is one I don't know how many of you guys have seen. It's kind of hard to find. It's a foreign documentary. It's a German documentary from George A. Romero from 1978. I don't know the name of it. I don't know who the director is. All I know is it was a 30-minute documentary that was shown on German television back in the late 70s on George A. Romero. It's included... It's in a couple of spots if you guys want to watch it, but it is included on the Martin Arrow DVD. It's a DVD. The Martin Arrow DVD from the UK from years ago. What year did this come out? 2010. It is included on this, as well as Vampire. For all you guys that want to own a copy of Vampire, this is where you can get it. It's the window box Arrow DVD release of Martin. But on here, it's just listed as a European Romero documentary. No title, no director. It isn't. It is also up on Larry's YouTube channel, WGON TV. And no information there. I couldn't find any information. If there is information out there on it, it may be in German, and I don't know how to speak German. So I'm just going to call it the German Romero documentary from the late 70s. And I have a clip here just to kind of show you guys what it is and kind of give you guys a taste of what it's all about. It's about a 25 to 30 minute long documentary. And I think it's a perfect companion piece to Document of the Dead, which is a documentary which we may or may not talk about here later. Because it was shot on location in the Monroeville Mall while they were filming Dawn of the Dead. And it's an interview with George, where this interviewer and George are sitting down and just talking about Romero's filmography. They talk about Night of the Living Dead, they talk about The Crazies, they talk about Martin, and they talk about Dawn of the Dead. So I do have a clip here I'm going to show you guys. It's about a 2.5 minute clip here of this documentary. For those that you've not seen it, just kind of give you an idea of what this is, and we'll talk about it here on the other side. So enjoy.
Januar 1978. In einer zum Teil unterirdisch angelegten Einkaufsstraße in der Vorstadt Monroeville drehte Romero den zweiten Teil einer Zombie-Trilogie, die er vor 10 Jahren mit Die Nacht der lebenden Toten, seinem ersten Film, begonnen hatte. Der Titel Dawn of the Dead, Dämmerung der Toten, mit einem Etat von $1 Million, Romeros bislang aufwendigste Produktion.
In ihrem ersten Film, Die Nacht der lebenden Toten, gab es viele Zombies. Und auch in dem Film, den Sie gerade drehen, Dawn of the Dead, Dämmerung der Toten, gibt es viele Zombies.
Sehr viele mehr.
Sehr viele mehr. Glauben Sie an Zombies? Warum wählen Sie dieses Thema?
I think there are a lot of zombies around, but not in the
Ich glaube, es gibt viele Zombies um uns, wenn auch nicht im üblichen Sinn des Wortes. Ich hielt sie für eine exakte Repräsentation von, wenn man das Fantastische als eine Allegorie akzeptiert, dann repräsentiert die tote Gesellschaft oder die der lebenden Toten tatsächlich die revolutionäre Gesellschaft. Mit anderen Worten, es ist die Gesellschaft, die aus der gegenwärtigen Gesellschaft erwächst. Der Zombie ist nichts anderes als eine geeignete Charakterisierung davon. ist ein Charakter, der aus uns heraus erwächst. Er wird nicht erschaffen wie ein Frankenstein. Er kommt nicht von außen, er ist kein Fremder. Er ist tatsächlich das, was wir werden. Deswegen habe ich diesen Charakter gewählt.
There's a lot of zombies out there. I love that line. George's like, yeah, there's a lot of zombies walking around. There's a lot of zombies among us. But yeah, that's kind of what this documentary, like I said, it's about a 25-minute to 30-minute long documentary, little thing they shot for TV in the late 70s over in Germany. There's a lot of really fascinating behind-the-scenes footage from on the set of Dawn of the Dead that you don't get. That's why, like I said, it's a really great companion piece to Document of the Dead, which, like I said, we may talk about again here later, but like whereas Document of the Dead kind of covers Romero and his filmmaking process and his style and the techniques in terms of his editing and you know, all the performances and all that. It looks at it more on a technical aspect. This little documentary is interesting to me because it's the guy sitting down talking to George about his films, and George is talking about it in a more it's more about what his films mean. Like what is he trying to say with these films? And to me, like this period of George, like this is George at his most confident. It's George at where he's free to express. It's like I was thinking this the other day after I was talking about the amusement park. The amusement park to me is what it is because George had kind of forgotten how to do a work for hire thing, where you grow up and you're doing commercial work, you're doing industrial films and all that, and George knows how to do that, to play within the rules, play within the box, and kind of give the Lutheran society, kind of give them what they're looking for in a palatable way. By the time he got to the amusement park, the man was just bursting. He had something to fucking say. He had a vision. He had things to say, get off his chest to do. And you get that in this document, in this interview that he's doing with this guy. I don't even know who the fucking interviewer is, or but you get inside of George's head, like where he's coming at, and not just with Dawn, but like I said, with Martin and the Crazies and Night of the Living Dead. You get I'm trying to think of how to say this better. It's a more philosophical discussion that this guy has with George in terms of his films and what they mean and where George is coming from. And I find that so fascinating. And there's footage of Pittsburgh and at the time in the winter, these are going through the streets of downtown Pittsburgh. And I've watched this little documentary over and over and over again. I love it. I love hearing George talk about his films in a deeper way, in a more serious way than a lot of the times you get, especially at this time. Like George wasn't doing a lot. He didn't have all the, like we were talking about earlier, he didn't have all those like not prearranged, but the usual answers to the questions. It was more a reflective George. It was more of like, why like I love the idea that the idea that these monsters are who we will become. Like we're all going to be dead one day. Like that's who, and like why is that my monster of choice type of thing? Like I don't know, I love it. It's a nice interview. There's some behind the scenes stuff from Dawn that you're not going to see anywhere else. It's a great documentary. Like I said, you can find it on this Arrow DVD release of Martin. It's also available on Larry's channel, WGON TV. He has it available if you want to watch the full thing. I even think it's on Chris Stavrakis' YouTube channel, Chris the Geek. I think that's Stavrakis, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's on his channel as well. So it's out there if you guys want to hunt it down and watch it. Like I said, it's about 25, 30 minutes long. But like I said, it's a perfect, beautiful companion piece to Document of the Dead, which to me is, spoiler alert, the ultimate Romero documentary. But yeah, have you guys seen it or not? What are your thoughts on it? Let's see, where'd I leave off? Okay, so Well, I think it'll work. So Paul says, love that one on Martin. Some incredible Dawn behind the scenes footage. Yeah, that's the big drawing point. Like it's a lot of George on set. You see George directing, like a lot of George directing the zombies, and I thought it was cool. You see Tom on the side of the bike. You like your mind. You've seen the movie so many times in your mind. He's gonna swing that fucking sword and take that woman's head off. But you see, he's like he lets up, and it's like, oh yeah, movie magic. All right. Yeah, it's a lot of great behind the scenes stuff. To go along with all the behind the scenes stuff that Roy Frumkus gets for Document. Robert says, to me, Martin makes no sense. How does the guy know he's a vampire, and why is he the villain when he's killing a man who kills women? I just don't get it. Okay, so you're talking about Cuda. Well, I mean, that's the ambiguous aspect of Martin. That's what I kind of like about it. It's like, Cuda, is he a villain? Is he... Because, I mean, he's not wrong. But at the same time, is Martin actually the vampire that Cuda believes him to be? And it's like, no, he's just a kid who's been mentally fucked his whole life by family members like Cuda who keep telling him that he is a curse upon the family. He's Nosferatu, and he must be saved and destroyed at once. Like, and so you got this kid who believes he's an 87-year-old vampire or what it is, or 84-year-old vampire, but there's really no good guy or bad guy in Martin. You tend to be more sympathetic to Martin's character, but then at the same time you remember it's like, oh wait, this character stalks women, rapes women, kills them, drinks their blood. Like, he's not a good guy, not a good character, but at the same time you feel sorry for him because he's so fucked up, because you see what he deals with on a daily basis from somebody like Cuda or society, the entire society around him, other than, the Christina character. Dude, I'm going to go on about Martin forever, but, it's showing, like, there's nobody in society that has Martin's back. And then the one woman who shows him some of it is just using him for her own means, and then she ends up offing herself, and then it's just like, okay, I'm back to square one. So, I mean, it's I don't know. I love Martin. You guys know it's my second favorite movie ever. So I love it. I could talk about it forever, but hey, to each their own, man. Brand says, I was getting emotional during my interview with Residents of Evil. They aired back in June. I remember watching that. It was recorded October 2023 when I just finished the first cut of the doc. Okay, I think I missed a couple of back and forth here between Robert and Brandon. But yeah, I mean, dude, get emotional. Like, I don't, like, this is the thing, like, you finished a film. Like, 99.9% of the people that want to do that will never do that. So that's an achievement in and of itself. And the fact that it's actually good is like, that's the fucking icing on the cake, dude. So, like, so yeah, I would shed some tears too. I'd be like, God damn, what a journey. And I fucking did it. Like, you fucking did it, man. And it's opening up other doors for you. So, like, that just goes to show, like, so I couldn't be happier for you, man. You did a fantastic job for sure. We're saying, wow. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool if you've never seen it. Brandon says that's a rather unique look at George from the 70s from that point of view of non-American documentary and neat. Yeah, that's the thing. And it's like, I feel like George felt like it was, I feel like George was okay to open up a little more about the more philosophical aspects of his filmmaking and what they mean. And especially when he's talking about, the crazies and comparing it to Dawn of the Dead and then talking about Martin and what Martin means. I mean, Robert talking about it a second ago. It's like where he was coming at from that point of view of like what Martin is about, and like and Catholicism and all that. Like it's and I felt like he was maybe because it was a non-English speaking guy he was talking to. He felt like maybe he was more open to, nerding out a little more, opening up on a more a deeper level, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I love it. I love that little interview and just kind of getting inside of George's head, especially, like I said, especially at that time period, because he was just George at his peak. he had the world by the balls at that point. Like he had Rubenstein by his side, who had his back, and George was getting to make his films and make his statements. And I don't know, I just love it. John says, I knew you were talking about that doc, but didn't know it was actually ever released in some way. So that's really cool. Yeah, I remember it being on this, and it took me a while to track it down today because I couldn't remember. I thought it may have been on. I have a German Blu-ray release of Dawn of the Dead. I was like, was it on there? And I was looking because it's all in German. I couldn't quite tell what was what, but then I was like, wait a minute, it might be on this Martin thing. I highly recommend picking this up. I know that there's the new Second Sight box set of Martin, which looks great. And it's a nice set to have, but it doesn't include Vampire, and it doesn't include this documentary. So if you can find this, and this is one that's kind of hard to find, it's out of print. It does go for some pretty big money. I wouldn't say big money, but it's not cheap. I'd recommend picking this one up. I mean, it comes just to kind of get into this release. If you guys find it, like I said, it's got the little window box, so you got the multiple covers of Martin to choose from. It's 2 discs, it's a double DVD. You got some little collector cards there. It comes with a poster, which I love. I think I showed this off once before, but it's got, the Arrow poster here. But it also comes with which I think is the tie poster, if I remember correctly. The tie, which I love this, for Vampire. But it's a hell of a collection, and still, I mean, I love that Second Sight set, but man, to me this set still rivals it. Just for me personally, just because it does include Vampire and this European, this German documentary, which again I don't know what the hell it's called, if it has a title or who the filmmakers were that made it, or I don't know. That's going to be something to look into, but. But yeah, it's a good release of Martin for sure. And I love Arrow. I mean, anything Arrow does is top notch, so you can't go wrong. Ed says, I've seen that German doc. It could be from channel BRF. All right, let me try this. Belgischer Rundfunk. All right, so in German that'd be Belgischer Rundfunk in Belgium. Oh, okay, Belgium. They did programs like this. I'll look into it. Well, yeah, man, if you find out anything, let me know, because I need more information. So, Bonnie said I need to get up early, so heading out. We'll watch the replay tomorrow. Good night, everyone. Well, good night, Bonnie. Always good to have you in here. Always glad to have you hanging out in the chat. So get some rest. I know it's Sunday. It's a little late. Already 2 hours into this sucker, so I'm gonna try to come in under 3 hours tonight. I still got 4 more to go here, but I'll try to get through them fairly quickly. So I know people got work and shit to do tomorrow, myself included. So Robert says, I will say I have no sympathy for Martin. Okay. The actor who played Martin did a great job. I wish we saw more of him. I'll say that. Yeah, John Amplas is fantastic, and of course he's in Day of the Dead. He's Fisher. He's also he plays the mime in Night Riders. He's Martinez, or I don't know, was that settled? Is he Martinez or is Joe Shelby? One of them's Rico, one of them's Martinez. I think he's Rico, maybe. Either way, he's the guy on the roof that gets shot in Dawn of the Dead. John Amplas, a great actor, great theater actor. He's still in Pittsburgh. He's teaching theater and stuff for all these years, and huge John Amplas fan. And I think it is a credit to his performance in Martin. It's Tarantino has been quoted as saying that John Amplas's performance in Martin as Martin is the best performance in any Romero film. So, and I tend to agree. That's one of my all-time favorite performances for sure. Yeah, he really has. He's been in pretty much everything. He's even Timothy Hutton's double in The Dark Half, like when Timothy Hutton is having to act with himself, quote unquote, George Stark and Thad Beaumont. He's working with John Amplas. John Amplas is, if they're facing each other, like Amplas is the guy in the foreground, whereas you can see Timothy Hutton, facing him. So they were kind of acting partners throughout The Dark Half. Little fun piece of trivia. Brandon says, I'm going to buy you a drink at Living Dead Weekend. Hell yeah, let's do it. You've been a blessing. Your channel is awesome and appreciate all the kind words. Well, I appreciate that, man. Definitely look forward to that. Like I said, I've seen you at Living Dead Weekend before, but I don't think we've ever spoken. I think maybe said hi or maybe a quick word, have a smoke break outside of Monroeville Mall or something, but I don't think we've ever really talked. So yeah, definitely look forward to that, man. And I will buy you one as well. just for fucking making a documentary about George A. Romero's Resident Evil, which is, if you wouldn't have done it, I don't know anybody else that would have. So I'm thankful for you just for that alone, my man. Robert says I'm bad with names. I know he was in Day and Creepshow. Yeah, he was Nathan Grantham, the zombie version of Nathan Grantham, not the flashback version. But yeah, John's worked with George on all kinds of stuff, and you know, still in Pittsburgh today, and still close friends with him. You know, he was good friends with Dave Emge. He was good friends with Raymond Lane. You know, Amplis was a big name in the Pittsburgh theater community for sure. Whiteface, Night Riders, and Don is one of the Rooftop Gang. He's also a stand-in for Tim. All right, so, okay, you're way ahead of me, John. You're way ahead of me. Oh, yeah, also in Russo's Midnight as well, and in a role that he loves to talk about. So if you ever meet John Amplis, make sure to ask him about his role in Russo's Midnight, and he'll you know, light up with joy. Still haven't seen Night Riders. Gonna buy it soon. Yeah, definitely gotta check out Night Riders. Rico. Okay, so that was said. I can never remember Martinez Rico because I just got to remember that Joe Shelby's on the rooftop and he says, "Rico, look out!" before he gets shot. So then okay, all right. And he's a wrestling fan. That's true. I didn't know that until because I'm friends with him on Facebook, and then I think it was like WrestleMania last year or something like that. Or maybe the Royal Rumble before WrestleMania, but he was posted. He was just a timeline full of like his takes on wrestling and like the storylines and the characters and shit. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. I had no idea. But Pittsburgh, man, Pittsburgh is a big wrestling town. I mean, that's Bruno Sammartino's hometown, man. That's Bruno land. That's, you know, Bill Cardill, the voice of wrestling in Pittsburgh. Like Kurt Angle, Pittsburgh. So yeah, it kind of makes sense. I'm sure he grew up in that same era as, you know, when Bruno was the biggest guy in wrestling. So it totally makes sense. Robert says, I've looked, but there's no good release of The Dark Half anymore. Just an old DVD. Well, stay tuned, my man. That's all I'll say. Stay tuned. Brandon says Night Riders is probably George's best film. It also feels like a family reunion of all the people George works with, and many of them in prominent roles. Very personal film. I agree. That's what I've always kind of thought. Like, it's one of the first thing that drew me to Night Riders the first time I watched it, because it was one of the last Romero films I ever saw. Because I knew it was in a horror film, and I was like, you know, I'll get around to it at some point. And then when I finally watched it, I realized, like, holy shit, like Ken Foray, Scott Reiniger, you know, Donald Rubenstein's in this, and it was like everybody was in, and it was just like a big family reunion, all going all the way back to, you know, his early stuff from, you know, like from Night on. Like it was a little bit of everybody in that movie. So if you're a Romero fan, you love his films, like you're gonna see a lot of familiar faces, that's for sure. John says Night Riders has a unique cast member from every Romero film, from Night to Dark Half, I think. Yeah. Early roles from Joe Pilato, where Pilato's kind of playing a version of Rhodes in Night Riders, where he's standing there, hands on his hips, and he's kind of barking, you know, holding court, kind of. God, that's a movie that Felsher needs to tackle at some point, is Night Riders. There's got to be a 4K release of Night Riders coming at some point, because that's one we still don't have on 4K that could definitely use it. I think would look great. Is a Night Riders 4K, and that desperately needs a feature-length documentary, and who, you know, Felsher would be the guy to do it. You know, unfortunately, we don't have George anymore to talk about it, which George loved Night Riders. Like, that was one of George's favorite of any of his films was Night Riders. It was one of his most personal films too. Like, So yeah, that's one. The Night Riders is one that definitely needs a feature-length documentary, because there's really nothing on it on any of the releases that I have. Like, there's an Arrow release, the Shout Factory, Anchor Bay. I don't think there's. I know there's some behind-the-scenes stuff and there's commentary tracks, but there's not an actual, making of, kind of like what Felcher did with Just Desserts or any of the stuff he's done. So that's one that definitely needs something like that. Ampless and Midnight, which I love him in Midnight. I like Midnight. I don't give a shit. But yeah, he's a huge fan of his performance in Midnight. Just ask him. Rob says, yeah, he was in Midnight. I saw that recently. It's definitely Russo's best movie. I agree with that. 100%. Since I asked Ampless at Living Dead Weekend, and he didn't know the Martinez answer, but he was part of the casting/production on. Yeah, casting director. He was the zombie wrangler. He would go out and find the zombies in Dawn of the Dead. Since says Night Riders is great, saw it as a kid before I knew who George was, and I loved it. Again, that's one I wish I would have seen when I was a kid, because I'm sure I'd have been a huge fan of it. Perfect reason for us to go out on our bikes with our fake guns, and which they didn't use guns, but we would use like a fucking, the broom handle or something, and fucking joust with each other. But we never thought of that. But if we saw Night Riders when we were kids, that probably would have entered our brain. And Brandon says, Day of the Dead needs a new release with new color grading. Absolutely. Yeah. But again, it's the whole controversy and the whole story of, whatever happened to the original camera negative on that. Like, I don't know if that's been found. I've heard rumors that it has been found, but then I've also heard rumors that it hasn't. So I don't know where that stands, but unfortunately, I haven't heard anything on Day of the Dead recently. So who knows? But number 4 on my list. Let's get back to I got 4 more to go. Try to go through these fairly quickly. But number 4 on my list is a newer one. This is one that just came out here recently. And it's probably one of my favorite Romero docs that I've seen in quite some time. And for me, it's all the way up at number 4. And it's included on the aforementioned Martin box set, the 4K box set from Second Sight over in the UK. And it's Taste the Blood of Martin, directed by David Gregory. It's a full-length documentary on the making of Martin, with interviews from Christine Romero, Mike Gornick, John Amplis, Tom Dubinsky. I think Tony Booba is on here, if I remember correctly. But I just loved it. Like, when I first saw, because again, Martin was one of those that we never really had a deep dive, like a full-length, extensive look at the making of and the legacy of and all that. And unfortunately, it was made after George had already passed. So George was not, in this one. But I'll tell you my favorite thing about this. There's 2 things in particular that I just love about this. Number 1 is it has John Amplis, Michael Gornick, and Tom Dubinsky walking around Braddock, taking like a locations tour, at all the different locations around Braddock where they filmed. That was a lot of fun. You got Amplis doing the lines and Gornick telling stories, and Dubinsky. I mean, they're the 2 best people to get any kind of information or stories about any of Romero's films. Tom Dubinsky and Mike Gornick. Like, those are the guys that you ask for information, because they usually have it. So that's one of my favorite things about this documentary is watching those guys kind of go around Braddock, modern day Braddock, and reminisce about filming. And then the other thing that I couldn't get enough of was Christine. Was the interview with Christine Romero, where she was talking about this time period. Because you got to think, like, when Martin was filmed, this was right around the time period that her and George kind of met and fell in love. Like, they'd met and were kind of talking previous, and George wanted Christine to play this role in Martin, and then their love kind of blossomed and all that, and then eventually they would get married and all that. But it was refreshing to hear Christine's side of the story, to hear Christine talk about that time period of, meeting George and how they met and how they, kind of fell in love. And of course, George was still married at the time. He was still, or kind of going through a divorce with his wife, Nancy, or his ex-wife, Nancy. And so just hearing Christine talk about, that time period of when her and George first met, and you can tell, like, I know Christine has moved on and is with, I don't know if she's remarried, but she's with somebody else now. But you can definitely tell that there's still a lot of love there from Christine to George, and especially talking to her at Living Dead Weekend. I got that vibe too, that she was still really broken up about, not just George's death, but the end of their marriage and stuff like that. So it was just really, really interesting hearing her tell these stories about, him taking her out and, always meeting up with her at Lady Astor's, and that's how he kind of met John Amplis and Dave Emge and Scott Reiniger and all those guys that were working there at the time. And I just loved that. I couldn't get enough of that. I would sit and listen to that. I could listen to an interview with Christine Romero for just because nobody knew George on a level that she knew George. Good, bad, ugly, whatever. Like, nobody knew George as much as well as Christine. So I ate that up. That was just great stuff. And in terms of just like a comprehensive documentary on all things Martin, which, like I said, what we've talked about, is my second favorite movie ever. Like, I'm just at that point now where I love that movie so much. Like, that's everything that I would want to make. If I were to make a film, Martin is everything that I would want to make. Guerrilla filmmaking, a crew of like 5 guys where you're just like moving, shoot this, shoot that. I'm getting everything, and I love it. I love it. And it had been so long, because the only thing that we had really gotten up to this point, like, they cover Martin a little bit in Document of the Dead. They cover Martin a little bit in that German documentary we just talked about. But it never really had its own, feature-length documentary just talking all about it. There was, on the Lionsgate release, there was a recounting, the making of Martin, but that was like 9 minutes long or something. Like, it was just like, yeah, we made this movie called Martin, and nobody went to see it, and it didn't make a lot of money, but it didn't cost a lot of money, but it was a great experience, and George is like, that's my favorite, because Martin is George's favorite film. Like, that's, of the films that he ever made, Martin was his favorite. And of course, they get into that in this documentary about, the long lost black and white 2.5 hour cut. Because I think the movie ends with, because Gornick's not a big fan of the movie, which I was kind of surprised to find out watching this documentary, because it was the first time he really talked about it. But Gornick didn't think the movie really worked for him. He liked the longer black and white 2.5 hour long cut. He prefers that. Wasn't a big fan of the final product. So I thought that was kind of interesting to find out. But they do kind of get into the long lost black and white cut of Martin and all that. And then the documentary kind of ends at the point where that print is just like rediscovered. We find out that it still exists. But again, like that's the thing. Like, George loved Martin. That was his favorite of his films. And he always talked about that black and white 2.5 hour cut. And he just thought, in any commentaries or interviews he ever talked about Martin, he would always say, I love Martin. It's my favorite film that I've ever made, but I would do anything to go back and find that black and white cut, because that was his cut. That was his preferred version of that movie. And of course, distributors are going to say, yeah, it's great, but black and white, really, come on, man, it's the 70s. Black and white's so 50s, so it's got to be in color, and we got to cut it down to 90 minutes. And the final product works perfectly fine for me. Like I said, it's my second favorite movie, but I would love, I got to see that black and white 2.5 hour cut, and I would do anything. Like, it kills me to this day that George didn't live long enough to watch it one more time, to experience one more. Because hell, he may have watched it again and said, "Oh yeah, that's not as good as I thought. Like I prefer, the 90-minute version." But because it happens like that sometimes. But I always regret that George didn't live long enough to see that the longer cut that he always loved and talked about. So, so yeah, I mean, for me to finally get like a feature length making of documentary of Martin on this was worth the price alone. So I had to get it. So, you can get this. It's funny. I find these on eBay quite a bit. These little box sets. So you can find them. They're a little pricey. It is region locked, the Blu-ray aspect, which has the documentary on it. So you do need like a region-free player to watch it. But yeah, it impressed me to the point where it's number 4 on my list, and it's a fairly recent. It's probably the most recent like Romero release in quite some time, I think. Like new 4K restoration type of thing, But yeah, have you guys seen it? What are you guys' thoughts? Where are we at? I think we're right here. Robert says, I'm kind of scared of Knight Riders. Everything you guys are saying about it makes me think I should love it, but the storyline without seeing it sounds terrible, but I'll still get it. Hey, I mean, it's not a horror film, so don't go into it thinking that, but it is a Romero film. It's an action film. There's some good stunt work in it. It's Savini's best performance. It's a fun movie, man. It's a fun movie. Definitely go in with an open mind, though. Go in with an open mind. Brandon says it's a drama, but there's some great stunts by Tom and his team. It's a great movie. I finally saw it some years ago and felt like a fool for not watching it sooner. It became my favorite. There you go. I kind of had the same reaction. Like when I first saw it, I was like, God, why did I wait so long to finally fucking watch this movie? Like this is one of my favorite Romero films now. Sin says, yeah, that Martin doc is great, and the walking tour of Braddock made me visit the depressing town during Living Dead weekend. Hey, it's not that depressing. Come on. I love Braddock. All right, wait a minute. We got some information here. Ed, Trader Music Entertainment, says, I have the info on the German documentary. It's called Romero, a Moralist from Pittsburgh. Interesting. Produced by Saarländischer Radfunk, a channel from Saarland, Sweden. That's a lot of German I'm not going to pronounce, but that's interesting. Excellent work, Ed. Excellent work. Let me write that down so I don't forget. Romero, a Moralist from Pittsburgh. Which is an interesting title. But it's true, a moralist from Pittsburgh. I kind of dig that. Awesome. Great work, Ed. Thank you so much, my man. Because I looked up and down trying to find some information, and I was like, nobody's ever that I ever found, so I don't know where you found that, but you're the fucking man, dude. Thank you so much. That's awesome. Yeah, great score, Synth. Great score by Donald Rubinstein. Very sad in parts. That's probably my favorite Rubinstein score, even more so than Martin or Bruiser. Definitely not, but Knight Riders is like Rubinstein's like epic, perfect score for that. Robert says, I don't have a region-free player. So many things from Second Sight I can't watch. What would be a good region for? I got mine for fairly cheap, maybe 150, 160 bucks. It's like, I think it's 220 electronics or something like that, where you can get them ordered, where they they code break them, whatever they call it. You can get a region free player for not a bad price. Mine was a 4K region free player, which this is the thing, like 4Ks are all region free, so you can get them wherever, and they're not. Although there have been talk recently about possibly changing that, but as of now, all 4Ks are region free. It's just the Blu-ray stuff. So when you get this, the 4K of Martin, it would work fine on anything, but all the bonus features and stuff are on Blu-ray, so that will be region locked. So, but yeah, 220 Electronics, I think is the name of the website. Good sleuthing, sir. Absolutely. Paul says, speaking of Braddock, Tony Booba's Lightning Over Braddock is an amazing documentary as well. Well, you don't gotta tell me, sir. No, nobody loves that fucking movie more than I do. I'm the biggest Tony Booba fan, Booba maniac out there. So I'm 100% on board with you on that one, my man. Love Lightning Over Braddock. Which I have a Lightning Over Braddock t-shirt for sale over on shop.alpharomero.store. So, just throwing that out there. Brent says, agree. Beautiful score by Rubenstein. Really highlights the drama. Love everything about that film. It is a damn near perfect film for me. Like, very little about that movie doesn't work. It's a little long, but I think it works. Romero loves long shit. I mean, I think he talks about it in that German documentary. He talks about, I love long movies. I love making long shit. But, distributors are not the biggest fans of long movies, so he has to cut them down most of the time. John says, same. I had a completely wrong idea about the movie till I saw it. Talked to Gornick about it, and he wasn't surprised because the movie had promotional issues. Yeah, it was kind of confusing for mainstream audiences, and I think it came out like the same weekend as, I can't think of the name of the movie, but it was a big, like, actual, like, sword and sorcery movie or something that came out at that time. I can't remember which one it was, but again, it was kind of like a Day of the Dead, Return of the Living Dead thing. It was kind of confusion in the market, type of thing. And it was just kind of this weird, guys in medieval outfits on motorcycles. Like, what is that? Like, what is that about? Because the poster art kind of makes it look like a science fiction film or something, like a Mad Max movie or something. So I bet it was, it was kind of confusing for people. Let's see, since it's the 70s, let's show the garish colors everywhere and lots of brownish wood paneling. Absolutely. Absolutely. Robert says, no, sir, Monkey Shines is coming to 4K and Blu-ray from Scream Factory very soon. That's right. That's a bit of information, a bit of news I forgot to tackle on the last stream. Is, we're getting Monkey Shines on 4K coming soon. Which I'm kind of excited about that. I don't think I've seen... It's been a while since I've watched Monkey Shine, so it'd be a perfect time to go back and watch it on 4K. So I'll probably pick that one up. Paul says, I think you might be able to watch the 2.5-hour black and white version of Martin at the Romero archive. Suze was in there watching it while I was there. I might be wrong, though. I think she was. I visited the archive a couple of years back. I can't remember when. It was a couple of years ago, but I was in the archive, and Suze was in there watching something. I don't know what. I was just assuming that that's what she was watching, but she was in there watching something. I know it's in the archive. It's been digitized. It's there, but I don't know if they're screening it yet or allowing people to watch it yet. And I've actually heard Suze talk about, I think it was on one of the Garf streams she was on, and I think I asked the question. I was like, are there any plans for it, or is it going to be screened or anything? And she was just pretty much like vehemently like, nope, there's no plans for it. Like, and there doesn't need to be plans for it. And it was kind of a weird response. She was just like, there's no plans for it, and there's no reason for there to be plans for it, because it just needs to exist in the archive, and and that's that. I was like, oh, okay, well, that kind of sucks to hear, but I mean, I'm glad that it's safe and in a good spot, but I would like to see it sometime, but. So I don't know. I don't know what the plan is for it. John says, I don't think so. Only a handful of people have seen it. Suze Amplis and Patton Oswalt, oddly enough. Yeah, are the only ones that I know have seen it. Yeah, I've heard that Suze Amplis and Patton Oswalt are the only ones that have seen it. Which I think Nicotero's probably seen it too. I would guess he's probably seen it since he's the one who bought it. So I would hope he has a copy of it or has at least seen it. So, but yeah, I heard the Patton Oswalt thing. I was like, yeah, of course. Like, of all people, like, I know he's a huge fan and stuff like that, but it's just like, it's just a weird name to come out of left field. It's like, Suze Romero, the widow of George Romero, the filmmaker, the guy who made the fucking thing. That makes sense. John Amplis, the star of the movie, has seen it. That makes sense. And Patton Oswalt. It's like, what? But I guess, I think he's a, I think he's a donator or something to the Garf or something like that. He's donated some money and some work and stuff for. So I guess it makes sense in that way. But it's just like a weird name to come out of left field when you're thinking about that. But yes, if the pizza scene doesn't work, yeah, maybe like I said, maybe the grossest scene in any Romero film ever. It beats Rhodes getting torn in half. Like it doesn't even come close. Like that's one of the grossest. Like it's one of those scenes that like makes you not want to eat pizza if that's possible. Yeah, that's it, John. Excalibur. That's what I was trying to think of. I was gonna say like sorcerer, but I was like, no, it's not sorcerer. Robert says I'm about to get Lightning over Braddock. Kino Lorber sale. Yeah, it's usually on sale over at Kino. When Kino's having their sales, it's usually about $8 or $10. But yeah, I highly recommend checking it out. You may like it, you might not. I don't know, Robert. It's a weird movie, but it's Tony Bubba's sense of humor, and it's all about these weird characters and Braddock, and it's a fun movie. I love it, but I love Martin, I love Braddock, and I love Tony Bubba, so it makes sense. Night Riders reminded me of Megaforce, but Megaforce was terrible. Maybe that was why. Maybe people thought it was some kind of sequel to Megaforce or something. People were like, fuck that. Patton was a major fan of Martin, wanted to meet Amplis. There you go. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I get it. It's he's a famous guy, and, there's connections there between him and the Garf, so it makes sense. Excalibur's a great John Borman movie. I've never seen Excalibur, so I can't speak on it. But I've always heard that was the reason that there was some confusion on why Night Riders didn't open quite as well as that. It opened too close to which whether it's true or not, I'm not sure, but you never know. Chris Stavrakis looks like Patton Oswalt. Yeah, maybe they get confused. Maybe it was Chris Stavrakis who saw it, and he was just telling people he was Patton Oswalt. But okay. All right, 3 more to go, and we're already. I'm gonna see if I can get. I'm trying to get under 3 hours tonight. But number 3 on my list, top 10 Romero documentaries. Number 3. This is an easy one. Directed by Perry Martin. The Dead Will Walk documentary, first included on the Dawn of the Dead Ultimate Edition box set. Other than Document of the Dead, this is the definitive Dawn of the Dead documentary out there, in my opinion. I've seen this documentary so many times, and it was the first in-depth documentary like this about Dawn of the Dead that I could remember. You get interviews with everybody. You get the main cast, Ken, Scott, Galen, David. They're all included in this. George, Mike Gornick. You even get interviews with people that I haven't really heard anything from after, like Zilla Clinton. I always loved hearing from Zilla Clinton in this one. Pretty much anybody and everybody associated with Dawn of the Dead that was available was added to the Dead Will Walk. Love it. Like I said, I've seen it so many times, especially on this version. It's been included in so many different versions of Dawn of the Dead, from overseas to the new Scream Factory box set. I mean, it's just pretty much just as much as Document of the Dead is a companion piece to any release of Dawn of the Dead. You can't go wrong with it. Always love the stories of hearing Christine talk about going overseas to Rome. I think Dario's even interviewed in it. But I love the story of Christine talking about going to Rome, and they, in this beautiful apartment, and George is writing the screenplay, and he's talking about we're going to have bikers in the mall, and Christine's like, who do you think you are, MGM? And again, a lot of these stories, when this documentary came out, it was the first time that I, or most people, had really heard any of this. Because I do remember seeing Document of the Dead first, but that was from the time of when it was made. This is kind of reflect a retrospective on the movie. And Dawn of the Dead, when I first saw Dawn of the Dead and first kind of fell in love with the movie when I was younger, it was one of those movies that I didn't know anything about. Like, I didn't know any of the actors. Like, it wasn't like, oh, Johnny Depp's in this movie. It wasn't anybody that I could pinpoint. There wasn't a lot of information out there. It was one of those movies that, like, not a lot of people had seen, like, especially my age. So I was always the kid in school that was like, oh my God, have you seen Dawn of the Dead? And, like, all my friends who were into horror movies that like Jason and Freddy and shit were like, no, I've never seen, what is that? So there wasn't, like, a whole lot of information about these movies, or especially Dawn of the Dead back then. So when The Dead Will Walk came out in this box set, I think that was, if I remember correctly, that was the first thing that I remember watching when I got it home that night. Because I bought it at Walmart on my birthday in 2004 when it came out. And that documentary was the first thing that I watched, and I watched it so many times since then. It's actually been a while. I haven't watched it in quite a while because it's just been hammered into my brain over the years, but it's easy top 3 all-time favorite documentaries for me is The Dead Will Walk. And I've seen this documentary. I used to watch it so much back in the day. I used to watch it when I would go to bed. Like when I was younger, I'd go to bed, I'd put on a commentary or a documentary or something to fall asleep to, and I'd watch it so many damn times that my parents always tell me to this day, it's like, so many nights we would get up in the middle of the night and we would just hear that fucking music from the menu screen on this box set version of The Dead Will, or, Dawn of the Dead, and the bonus features, it was the Goblin track that's just like boom, 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 and it just plays on repeat constantly. So that's their memory of waking up in the middle of the night and that fucking menu music is just on constant repeat, because I watched it so many times over and over again. But I mean, it's, again, outside of Document of the Dead, the definitive Dawn of the Dead documentary. There's been some others since then that haven't made the list, like the Second Sight documentary, Zombies and Bikers, that David Gregory did. Fun documentary. It's kind of like, that one is reminiscent of like Autopsy of the Dead to me, because it's kind of more so about the smaller, like a lot of the zombies, like, Sharon Hill and Jim Crut, and a lot of those characters get their say, as opposed to, The Dead Will Walk is more about like, the Tom Savinis and the main forecast and George, and which, any documentary that has George in it that's talking about his films, like, that's automatically big points for me. So but yeah, I don't have too much to say about this one. It's pretty obvious. I mean, I think it's probably the most famous Romero documentary out there. I've seen it. It's on YouTube. It's been clipped and used a billion different times. The Dead Will Walk, and it's on everything else, but this is the original. This is where it first originated. Was the Ultimate Edition box set. So that's number 3 for me. So I don't want to spend too much time on there. I'm running out of voice. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I'm running low on voice. Robert saying, Land of the Dead was my first spark with Romero over the years. Now you are my second spark with Romero. Well, thanks so much, man. I appreciate that. And I was thinking about this the other day. Like, I hope that I'm doing what Matt Blasey and Eric Kent did for me, like, because they were my second spark for Romero when they started doing WGON Radio, the podcast from years back. Discovering that, like, got the juices flowing and got me, like, target, like, zoned in again. So if I'm having that effect on you, my man, like, that means the world to me, and I really appreciate that, dude. So thank you. That's what I like to hear. Steven says, I know why Knight Riders didn't do well. No kid. It was confusing. People were like, where the fuck is the car? Where's Hassel? Where's the Hoff, man? No Knight Rider with no Hoff? Come on. John said, I love the Knight Rider TV show. I heard that Sala got some money back because of the Knight Rider, or because Knight Rider had to pay. Yeah, that's interesting. I've never even thought of that. Knight Rider debuted in 82. That's interesting. I never even thought of that. But yeah, that is always a thing. Like when I type in Knight Riders on Google or something like that, it always takes me straight to the TV show. Since I recently saw Ken Foray in Terror Squad 87. Terrible movie, but fun. Yeah, I've never seen it. But yeah, Ken did a lot of terrible movies. There was like Death Spa and Leatherface, the Chainsaw 3, which I'm a fan of Chainsaw 3, and he's bad as hell in that movie. Not bad like a bad actor, but like a badass. But yeah, Ken, which is funny, Ken got most of the work after Dawn of the Dead, like Scotty, Galen kind of became a filmmaker. Scotty went on and taught acting and did theater, and David just kind of, did a couple things after, and I didn't really do too much acting after that. But yeah, Ken has had a hell of a career after Dawn. John says, and Ken appeared in Knight Riders and Knight Rider. There you go. Fun little bit of trivia there. Since saying the Dead Will Walk is a good one. Yeah, like I said, that one's been talked about to death. I mean, it's an easy top 3 for me. It had to be on this list because I've seen it so many times. That like I said, easy top 3 for me. Ken is great in From Beyond. I haven't seen From Beyond yet, but I've heard good things from a lot of people about it, and that's one that's on my list of shit to watch. So that's on the list. Yeah, Robert. See, there you go. Robert's a fan. From Beyond. So yeah, I'm behind. I gotta check that one out. But all right, I gotta get through these final 2 before my voice gives out, guys. This one's gonna be controversial. This one's gonna be interesting. So we talked about Michael Felsher earlier, Just Desserts and World's End. But number 2 on my list is a Michael Felsher documentary, Romero documentary. And y'all gonna think I'm crazy, but I love this fucking documentary. I watched it again today. And say what you want about the movie, love it or hate it, like it, I don't care. But it's a documentary on the making of Survival of the Dead, Walking After Midnight by Michael Felsher. So I talked earlier about when you get Felsher and Romero together in an interview situation, you get the best of Romero. You get a relaxed Romero. You get a comfortable George. You're gonna get more. Walking After Midnight is, in terms of the interview segments where they're sitting down and George is being interviewed, George is having a blast. Like, you can tell he's probably had a few. He's chilling. There's a scene where he's got a Muppet of himself, and he's doing, which I think I did a short on my channel, but he's doing the thing where and Felsher asked him, he's like, what do you want people to enjoy about your new movie? And George just got the puppet, and it's just, I hope the fans don't enjoy shit about this movie. And George is just cracking up, and Felsher's cracking up. And it's just one of those heartwarming fucking moments. And you just look and you're like, God, like, I just wish George was still here. He was so full of life, and so we've lost a lot with George. And this documentary, and this is the final film. This is George's final film. You see him on the set from the beginning of the shoot all the way to the very end. You see him on the set of his final film. And like I said, whether you like the film, whether you don't, the documentary is worth picking this Blu-ray up alone, just to have the it's a feature-length documentary. It's like an hour and a half long, and really the star of the documentary is Michael Felsher, and I'm a Michael Felsher fan. And the story is Michael Felsher going to visit the set of Survival of the Dead, and they don't even know the title of the fucking movie at this point. Like, the whole time they're filming it, it's just called Of the Dead. And George has this great moment in the documentary where they're all trying to come up with, like, well, what are we going to call this movie? And you get all the the suggestions from the cast and crew, and it's like, oh, and George at one point wanted to call it Isle of the Dead just for the pun. He's like, I love the dead, I love the dead, I love the dead. Get it, get it, get it. And he's like, and nobody was going for that. So, and then you hear all the others like, all right, we're gonna do Army of the Dead, we're gonna do this of the dead, this of the dead. And George is just like, well, how about we just call this fucking movie Enough of the Dead? Why does it have to be of the dead? Enough of the dead. And then apparently they went with Survival of the Dead, and nobody knows who came up with the fucking title. So, it's just great. It's a great documentary that's you're following Felcher. Felcher, like I said, is kind of the main character of this documentary. And his journey on the set, where you're seeing all the troubles and all the shit that they had to go through in the filming of this, in terms of the weather and the cold and the rain. Any interview, everybody on the set just seems like they're having the greatest time. Kenneth Welsh is pulling a Leslie Nielsen on the set with a fart machine. It looks like everybody on the sets, yeah, they're working in shitty conditions, but everybody's having a great time, and George is loving every second of it, because he's making a Western. And at one point Felcher asked him, and he's like, well, do you think it's kind of weird that all of a sudden on this island they're in these houses that look like time hasn't touched them in 100 years? Like it's like we've gone back to the 1800s randomly for some reason. Are you just doing this because you just want to make a Western, and this is just your way to get around it? And George is just like, well, short answer, yeah, that's it. Like, whatever. Like, if you can't get past that, then you're not gonna like this movie anyway. But George just wanted to make a fucking Western, and George was making a Western, and George was just having the time of his life doing it. And you see it in this documentary, even in the bad weather, and and George's, like I said, this is George's last film, so he's up there in age, and he's full blast, having a great time, and it's just a lot of fun to watch, and a lot of fun to see, and a lot of fun to just follow Felcher through this whole thing and getting his takes on everything that's going on. And one of the most interesting parts of the documentary is on the final day of shooting of Survival of the Dead. They're in the studio now, the studio space, and they're filming some stuff in a pool, and it's the last shots. And the last day of shooting, it's 2008, was November 4th, 2008, and the final day of shooting was Election Day, and the day that Barack Obama became elected president and was elected, the first African-American president in American history. And they're talking about it, and everybody's really engaged, and George is kind of reminiscing and thinking about it, and it is kind of like this full circle moment in George's career. Sorry, I keep hitting this microphone because I talk with my hands. I'm like Tom Savini. I'm just like, ugh. But it is like this full circle moment for George's career. Because if you remember, in Night of the Living Dead, George always tells the story of like, oh, we finished the film, we threw it in the trunk of the car, and we drove it to New York, and that's when we heard the news that Martin Luther King had been assassinated. And it's like that was like the end of the first film that he shot, was the civil rights movement and the assassination of Martin Luther King. And then the final day of shooting on the final film that he ever did was the day that we, as Americans, elected the first black president. Something he was just like, I never thought it was possible. I just never saw it ever happening, And whatever your politics are, whatever, but it was still it's a big moment in history. And like I said, it just felt like it's like a full circle moment for George's career, of just like where it began in the time period, and where Night of the Living Dead was coming from, to where he ended with Survival of the Dead, the last thing he ever shot. I just find that interesting, moving, whatever the word is for it. I just find it, I think it's pretty cool. But again, it's George just having a blast, having a laugh with Felcher, and you see at the end at all the premieres and all that, and you see him just beaming with pride, just because he's at all the premieres and he's getting standing ovations, and he's just at the height. This is that time period where, George was a cultural icon. He was the zombie guy, the godfather, the king of zombies, before Flyboy took that crown. it's just, I don't know. I just love this documentary. It's to me, it's Felcher's best Romero documentary, just because it's George's last film, and it's George loving every minute of it and having a blast doing it. I don't know. I'm a huge fan of it. I highly recommend checking it out, even if you're not a fan of Survival of the Dead. And I know that not a lot of people are big fans of Survival of the Dead. It's one of those movies that I really want to go back and I want to like more and more, because to me, it was George's second favorite zombie film behind Day of the Dead. He said that. He was like, I hope one day that, people go back and watch Survival of the Dead and kind of get it. But, unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be that way. But it's worth picking this up, if for nothing else than picking up this documentary, Walking After Midnight. I love it. Like I said, I love Felcher. I love his work, and this is to me the most fun Romero documentary that he ever did. So that's number 2 on my list. Walking After Midnight, the making of Survival of the Dead. I bet you guys didn't see that shit coming, did you? And I thought about it. I was like, well, do I want to put it at 2? And then I was thinking, and I rewatched it earlier today, and I was just like, yep, that's got to be number 2. I have so much fun watching it, and it's just great seeing George in that environment again, and just loving making movies, But what do you guys say? What do you guys say? After Effects. That's one that didn't quite make my list. I didn't go with After Effects because it's technically not a Romero documentary. It's more of a documentary on Pittsburgh filmmaking as a whole, and the movie effects. But that's a good one. George is in that one, so yeah. I knew this one would be controversial. It'd be different, but I just got to be honest. I got to be honest with you guys. I'll always be honest with you guys. You guys know of my weird fucking picks from my favorite non-Romero zombie films. Just if I'm coming at it from completely honest, like that's got to be my second favorite. Like I remember when I first saw that documentary, I remember where I was in, and just the feeling of just like, this is great. Like, I love this document. This is what I want to see. Like, I want to see George being George and doing what he does best, Robert says, holy shit, I was thinking about this doc earlier. It's so good. Thank you for bringing this up. Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, like I said, whether you like Survival of the Dead, whether you don't, it's still George's last movie. It's his finale. And he loved it. So maybe we're all missing the boat on it. I don't know, but maybe it'll grow with time. We shall see. Ken says, Stephen says Ken was also in The Wanderers, underrated film. I haven't seen that one either. Ed's saying, I don't hate the survival film or documentary. John Russo came up with survival. or maybe it was actually Susanna Sparrow making one last contribution to the world of Romero. Yeah, I don't hate survival. I love the documentary. I just went on about the documentary, but I don't hate survival. It's just, I don't know. It's like, and I can see, like, when you watch the documentary and like some of the issues that they were facing with timing, like the time wise, and George talks about this. He's like, I miss the days of like Martin, where it's just such a small crew, and it's just like, I just want to shoot as much shit as I can get. And it's just like, I want to get a shot of this clock. Well, it's not lit right. Well, fuck it. Let's get a shot anyway. Click. All right, let's move on. And so you have all this stuff to work with on the editing table later. And it's like, by the time you get to survival, it's like, everything costs so much money and it's so much time that you can only do so many takes. You can only get so many setups. And I think that's a lot of my problem with survival, is a lot of the stuff doesn't feel like it hits the way that it should. Some of the dialogue, some of the action scenes, some of it doesn't quite fit right. And I think it's just budget and timing wise. I think they just didn't have the time, and they were dealing with horrible filming conditions. It'd be raining one minute and snowing the next. And So you can see the struggle, but they say, you know, the crew and stuff, they talk about it in the documentary. They're just like, you know, yeah, we're cold, we're tired, feel like I'm getting bronchitis, but you look over and you see George and he's happy and wired and ready to go. And every day, like there's no, so it's like, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And people, you know, people responded to that. So, John says George said that he was rushed to do a follow-up for Diary and admitted didn't have a good idea, so he decided to take another slant on the genre, which is why it's a Western, not a social commentary. Well, there's definitely some social commentary in it. I mean, he was definitely, and he kind of mentioned that at the end when he was done filming it. That's why he went back and added an extra scene like 7 months after the fact. It's because after Obama got elected, you kind of saw the warring factions of, you know, Tea Party and all whatever else was going on at the time. So kind of inspired. He wanted to add a little something to kind of feed into that a little bit, maybe. But yeah, it was definitely rushed because Diary was such a success on DVD. I mean, it made a ton of money, a lot of DVD sales. So when that happens, they're like, okay, make another one of those. And George, at that point in his career, because Survival was kind of a flop. Like Survival wasn't a big success at all, theatrically or home video. So when George got a green light at that point in his career, he had to just go. Like he says that in documentary. It's like, you get the green light and it's like, okay, you can't say no. You can't say, well, I'm going to wait a while. I want to try and do something different. It's like, okay, well, somebody's going to give you money to make a movie. And at this point in my career, I can't say no. So it's kind of, that was a big issue too. I think it was a very rushed production, and you could tell that even the screenplay felt a little rushed. But at the same time, I just think it's awesome that George was just like, fuck it, I'm going to take this money and make a Western and put some zombies in it, because they're asking for a zombie movie, but I've always wanted to make a Western, so I'm going to make a fucking Western. But yeah, that's a good point too. That's a good point. It was very rushed. Paul says, I was talking with Matt Blasey, who is a zombie in Survival, and it definitely sounded like everyone had an absolute blast on that set. Yeah, didn't Blasey end up being, I know he was a zombie in Land, too. Did he do Diary as well? Was he in the last three? I can't remember. But yeah, you actually see a quick glimpse of Matt in the Walking After Midnight documentary. You catch him in zombie makeup, so... just for proof that he's there, Robert says, I've always loved Survival of the Dead and the documentary. I know you've always been a fan of it, man. Like I said, maybe you're ahead of us and the world will catch up. Maybe you're like that kid in 1986 who saw Day of the Dead and loved it. It loved it more than Dawn of the Dead, which was unheard of back when that movie came out. People were just like, fuck this movie. This isn't Dawn of the Dead. So maybe we're all behind you, man. We'll catch up eventually, but George loved it too, man. That was, like I said, that was his second favorite of his zombie films, was Survival. So, excuse me. John says, by controversial, I thought it may be outside the scope. Didn't even know there was a doc in Survival. I don't hate Survival, so I'm okay with it. Yeah, man, check it out. And that's a thing too. I think I've said that to Uncle Bill once in one of the chats, because Uncle Bill hates Survival of the Dead. Like, he just refuses to even watch it. But I think I mentioned to him, I was like, dude, that Blu-ray is worth getting just for that documentary alone. I mean, it's Felsher, and it's George's last movie, and it's really entertaining, and George is fucking hilarious in it. Like, because he's just like, whatever, man. Like, I'm just making my movies now. Like, so yeah. Highly recommend it. Checking that out for sure. Since says, did you ever see Doc of the Dead, 2014 by Alexandra O. Philippi? Sorry, I've never even heard of that. Doc of the Dead. Actually, it does sound familiar, but I can't tell you what the hell it is. But no, I haven't seen it, no. Steven said, I heard Hulk Hogan came up with the title. He was supposed to play... You know what, brother? As a matter of fact, dude, I came up with the title, and I was supposed to play the horse. And that sounds like a Hogan story. I love Hogan. Yeah, I'm sorry. Hogan is the greatest, one of the greatest workers of all time. When I say workers, I don't mean like he does a lot of moves or anything like that, but he works. Like he works the fucking crowd, he works his gimmick, and the dude is still working a gimmick to this day, and I respect that. He's still working that fucking gimmick to this day. Same with Flair. Flair's the same goddamn way. Once a worker, always a worker. Till the day they die. I respect it. Van Sprang was a weekly too. Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of him in that either, especially as a lead. I think he's fine in Land and Diary, but as the lead guy, yeah, wasn't a big fan of it. John says, "Oh, I see. I've only seen it twice, so I may have missed it." Yeah, I mean, check it out again. I try to revisit it like once a year just to see if I'm missing something, but. Okay, guys, we're over 3 hours into this sucker. I gotta get to bed. And my voice is about to give out. But if you haven't guessed it by now, if you haven't figured it out, number one on my list, my all-time favorite Romero documentary, it's got to be Document of the Dead. Nothing beats Document of the Dead for me. To me, it's the ultimate end-all, be-all, not just documentary on Dawn of the Dead, but documentary on George, period. There's like 3 different versions of this. There's the original version, which plays kind of like a studio film. Like it's like something you would show in film school. It's like 60 minutes long. Then there was another version that was released in the 90s that had added footage from behind the scenes of Two Evil Eyes and all that, which is interesting, which was crazy to see. But then in 2012 is when this came out, the definitive Document of the Dead, which is, how long is this sucker? It's like 2 hours. But it literally goes from Dawn of the Dead, the original stuff that he shot, that Roy Frumkus went to visit the set, shot on Dawn of the Dead, plus the Two Evil Eyes footage, then goes all the way up through Land of the Dead and Diary of the Dead. So it's covering George's entire career at this point. But the original version, the original Document of the Dead, that's what made me fall in love with George, the filmmaker, when I was younger. I remember seeing it on IFC. It came on after or before Dawn of the Dead, in that first run there. And I remember seeing on the little guide, like back in the day, we had little guides that we'd see, like, oh, Dawn of the Dead's playing here. What's playing after that? Oh, Document of the Dead. What is that? And so I remember recording it, because it came on late that night, and I was young. I think I had to go to bed, school the next day or something like that. So I remember recording it, coming home the next day, watching it, and it was just kind of confused. I was like, what is this? It's like behind the scenes footage of Dawn of the Dead, but it's also like, it feels like something you would have to watch in school, because it's basically telling, it's showcasing Romero's, the techniques that he used and the his style. Whereas I was talking earlier about the German documentary is more about Romero's philosophy in terms of the stories and the characters and the way he, his filmmaking process philosophically. This is more of a technical breakdown of like Romero's editing. Like this is where I first saw Romero behind an editing table, with gluing all the shit together and splicing it and doing the whole like. And I was just blown away. I was like, holy shit, look how he works. What a maestro, you know what I mean? And, yeah, like I said, this is where I already loved Dawn of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead. I'd already seen Day of the Dead. But this is when I saw this is when I became a fan of George A. Romero, the filmmaker. And the way that Roy Frumkus kind of lays out, Romero's editing style, and you start hearing all these terms, and like for me, who was like a young, like, I want to be a filmmaker one day when I grow up, like this is the thing that made me want to try making films, because they start talking about with all these like words that I'd never heard before, or didn't understand, didn't know what they were talking about, like blocking. Like I didn't know what the hell they were talking about, but there's at one point they're talking to John Amplis about blocking a scene. I didn't know what that meant, so it made me want to find out more, and I was like, oh, okay. And then listening, and there's interviews with Carl Augenstein, which is fascinating because he's one of the only guys that has never really done any interviews or really talked about his experiences working on Dawn of the Dead since then. And funny enough, he's actually funny. Like Carl Augenstein was the only guy, reportedly, I think this is from Roy Frumkus, the director himself, was the only guy in this documentary that actually demanded to be paid for appearing in this documentary. So I thought that was kind of funny, but that was always kind of the rap on Augenstein, like Carl Augenstein, was that he was kind of a diva. But again, I loved hearing his stuff in there. He's talking about his process of like having to light them all and all that. And then of course the behind the scenes stuff from Dawn on location at the time. You get to hear from a young Mike Gornick. You get to hear from Scott Reiniger, David Emge, Ken Foray on the set while they're making the film. Like you get to hear their interviews and their takes, and it doesn't get any better than Document of the Dead for me. Like, and you get George walking around the mall with Roy Frumkus talking about, the process of making Dawn of the Dead, and they kind of lay out like how George goes from the script to the screen and how one translates to the other. I mean, it really was kind of like, I guess the best way to put it, it was kind of like going to film school through watching a Romero documentary, because I learned so much, like as an aspiring, one day I want to make films type of thing. I learned so much from watching this documentary when I was, 13 or whatever it was when I first saw it. And especially you watching George edit, which a lot of the footage of George in the editing room putting Dawn of the Dead together, that was all shot by Mike Gornick, because Roy Frumkus had gone back. I think it was New York, I think is where he was based out of, if I remember correctly. Maybe it may have been somewhere other than that, but I'll say New York because everything is based in New York, I guess. But he had gone back to New York, but he needed some footage of George editing the movie. So Gornick shot this footage of George working on the editing bay, and he sent it back to Frumkus and put it in there. So if you watch the documentary, all the footage of George in the editing room, it was shot by Mike Gornick. I thought that was pretty cool. But again, like I mentioned earlier, this was just at a period. This was George at his most confident as a filmmaker. He was coming off of Martin, which is obviously a movie that he felt was very successful. He had Rubenstein, kind of had his back. I mean, you just get the feeling that George was in full control at this point, at this point in his career, in terms of his style, what he wanted to say, what type of films he wanted to make. And you get the whole process from Document of the Dead. They go from the screenwrite, like the pre-production stage, to the production, through post-production, even all the way through like the distribution, when they're trying to find distribution for Dawn of the Dead a year after the film had already been made. You get to hear Rubenstein talk about that. I mean, it's one of the only appearances that Richard Rubenstein is prominently featured throughout this entire documentary. So you really get to hear, Rubenstein's point of view, and they'll try to figure out the way he thinks watching this, It's just, it doesn't get any better in terms of making of documentaries. This is the godfather of all Romero documentaries, hands down. Like, this is it. And even the added stuff with Two Evil Eyes, 10 years later, it ends, the stuff with Dawn of the Dead ends. He's like, is there room for more? Are you going to do another zombie movie? And George is like, well, the zombies are, as long as they're dumb, there's always room for more. And it cuts to them all those years later, and Frumkus is back on the set of Two Evil Eyes. And George is like, well, the zombies are a little smarter, but I'm getting dumber by the day. I always love that quote from George. But again, like talking about this time period when George was making Dawn, and you see how confident and just the artist that he is coming out in full display in Dawn of the Dead. By the time you catch up with him at Two Evil Eyes, it's kind of depressing because you kind of see he's kind of becoming kind of a beaten down version of himself. Like you can just see like he's kind of defeated. He just seems so much more, I don't know what the word is, but he just seems defeated. Like Hollywood has kind of gotten to him. Like the studio system has gotten its claws into him and kind of worn him down. And you just kind of see he's just, it's not the same guy. And he quit smoking at this point. He talks about how he's quit smoking and all that. And it's a really cool behind the scenes stuff with Tom Savini doing the little special effect with the little clock or whatever on in Two Evil Eyes, which I always thought was weird. I didn't know what the fuck they were doing because first time I saw this documentary, I'd never seen Two Evil Eyes, so I didn't know what the context of that was. I was just like, I don't know what's going on in this, but it's cool to see Tom working. So, but even Tom at that point, you could kind of see was kind of defeated. He's talking about all the missed opportunities that where he was going to direct a film and for one reason or another, the studio would just yank it out from under him. So it's just like, you see these guys, Tom and George, and they're at the height of their powers in Dawn of the Dead, and it's like, then you cut to Two Evil Eyes all those years later, and it's just like, they're beaten. Like they look kind of defeated. Like it's, but then in the definitive version, the definitive documented that where they add more footage after that, or they catch up with George 15 years later or whatever it was on the set of Land of the Dead. And George is kind of, it's full circle thing. And the interview that's kind of cool, there's footage of George. They interviewed Tina Romero when Tina was younger. They interview her and they actually have some footage of a little homemade movie she made when she was a teenager, and George is playing, the dad of the family in this little movie, and it's fucking hilarious. There's a lot of good stuff in it, and you kind of see George the span of his entire career by the end of the film. But for me, like that original document of the Dead, the Dawn of the Dead, behind the scenes, making of, and just the way that it's not presented as your usual like making of. It's presented like you're in film school. It's film school for Romero fans. It doesn't. I could go on and on about this. I have some notes here. I want to make sure I didn't forget anything. Anything important that I missed? I don't think so. I think I've pretty much covered most of it. I'm 3 hours and 15 minutes, and then I did not expect to go this far. But like I said, when I get rolling on these top 10 lists, I can start blabbering, and you guys know that. So appreciate you guys hanging out late with me tonight on this Sunday. But yes, number one favorite Romero documentary, hands down, Roy Frumkis's Document of the Dead. And I actually got Roy Frumkis. I don't know why I got him to sign it here, but on the back of the of this Blu-ray, I actually got Roy Frumkis to sign it for me when I met him at Living Dead Weekend a few years back. And it's one of the most influential films for me as when I was younger, as an aspiring filmmaker and as a huge Romero fan. It just, I can't tell you how many times I've watched this. What it means, but what do you guys think? I hit your chat, hit your comments here real quick, and then we'll get the F out of here. Get the F out of here. What am I? I don't want to get canceled. We're gonna get the fuck out of here. We're gonna go to bed. Go to bed. Got to work in the morning. John says, I always thought the woman doing the narration sounded like Lorraine Bracco. Yeah. Susan Tyrell is the woman's name. She always had she kind of sounds like me right now. My voice is about done, but she always kind of had like that smoker voice. She's like, this is the scene from Martin. And it's like, okay. Yeah, I get what you're saying there. I agree with that. Since says Frumkis is great. Love Document of the Dead. He also wrote, Street Trash. That was Frumkis as well. And he actually, there's a little mention of that at the end of the definitive document of the dead. He puts a little shout out to Street Trash. John says, I also really like the end credits music in one of the earlier versions, probably the one with the Ultimate Edition. Is it the... So the original version, it's just kind of like this weird huffing and puffing type of music. I don't know what to call it. It's like, I don't know. I'm not going to try to recreate it right now, but the definitive document, there's an actual song about, it all began with Johnny and Barbara, and it kind of goes through the whole story. There's like, I don't know who does the song or what it's from, but that's from the definitive document of the dead from 2012. Steven says, IFC used to be such a great channel, then they had to fuck it up with some sitcoms and commercials. Yeah, I don't even know what's on IFC anymore, but that was like I discovered so many of my favorite movies from IFC. I first saw Dawn of the Dead on there as well. I believe the second version is on the Ultimate Edition. Yeah, the second version of Document of the Dead that goes all the way through Two Evil Eyes. That was the first version that I saw. And then years later, I saw the original 60-minute version. And then finally, when the Blu-ray of this came out, I finally got to see the rest. Since as the narrator, Susan Tyrrell from Angel and Avenging Angel. Interesting. Okay. I knew that name sounds familiar. I didn't know what else she had done, but that's all I knew her from, really, was Document of the Dead. Steven says, kind of a personal question. Uh-oh. If you had the opportunity at some point, would you still want to make your own movie? Absolutely, man. That's always in the back of my mind. And of course, it's like, oh, why don't you? I got a camera and shit, but, it's a lot of money and a lot of cooperation that's required. But yeah, absolutely. I would always, I think about that all the time. Like, I'll just be driving down the road and I'll get an idea for a movie. I'll see like something on the side of the road. And I'm like, oh, that'd be a perfect spot for a scene, or that'd be an awesome shot, or I still have ideas for movies that I would love to do someday, quote unquote, but yeah, that's always a dream. I always think about that, but I think about that now with my daughter, because she's getting at that age now where she can act, she can do a little acting. You can tell her to do a zombie, she does a zombie. She can fucking quote child's play dialogue like a crazy person. So I'm thinking maybe I'll bring out the camera and we'll do a little movie or something with her at some point. But yeah, of course. And then I get inspired when I see people like Grande, who actually goes out and does it. Takes 2 days, gets a crew together, and makes a little short film. And again, like I was saying to Brandon earlier, it's like short film, long film. I mean, there's just the fact that you got a movie done, that you've accomplished making a film, that's more than most will ever accomplish. That's accomplishment enough. Whether it's any good or not, who gives a shit? Like, you did it. You got it made. It's the John Russo school of thought. It's like, we got it done. Just fucking get it done. Like, good, bad, whatever. Santa Claus, whatever. We got it done. We made a movie. What have you done? Anyway. Good question, though. Good question. Since I was a wannabe filmmaker once, but it took so much time and money, and all my friends weren't interested. Moved to 3D animation and music. Yeah, that's really what it breaks down to. I used to make movies and stuff in high school when all your friends would get together because you got nothing else better to do. And it's like, hey, let's make a movie. We'd do that every weekend. Let's film. Let's shoot. What are we shooting this weekend? And then you get older and you get jobs and families and you just break apart. And then all of a sudden it's hard to get anybody together to do anything. And it's kind of hard to make a movie with a one-man crew. Kind of have to have somebody in front of the camera too. Jeff, thanks for another great show, Michael. Have a great way. Thank you, man. Appreciate you hanging out tonight. It was a long one. I didn't expect it to be this long. I know it's a Sunday night. Everybody's got work and shit to do in the morning. So all you guys hanging out late, I appreciate y'all. Y'all are the real MVPs tonight. Since this doc and the book Rebel Without a Crew were great inspirations. Haven't read the book. But yeah, this doc is definitely... See, my big inspirations were shit like all these documentaries that I just talked about. That was my film school when I was teenager growing up. Like, if I wanted to learn about what it was like making a movie, like I would watch The Dead Will Walk, or, you know, The Many Days of Day of the Dead, or like that's when I would watch it over and over again, just to kind of try to pick up on little things. Like I said, watching Documentary of the Dead was like going to a little film school. You know, it was like learning about, oh, what does splice mean? What does that mean? You know, like you learn that shit. So yeah, I don't know. That was my film school. It was all these documentaries, which is why it took me so long to kind of narrow this down to 10, because if we were doing just any period, like, forget about it. But in terms of Romero ones, I think that's a solid 10 for me. Oh. It says, good list. One Saturday I watched One for the Fire, The Dead Will Walk, and The World's End in a row, followed by The Many Days of Day of the Dead for good measure, and they all mesh well together. Absolutely. I did a ton of that in the past couple of days getting ready for this stream. So I'm Romero documentaried out for the time period, or for the time being. So John saying great doc, can't disagree. And says it definitely was instrumental. I remember the credit music being different in the newest version. Yeah, I don't know who the song is by or whatever, but it's kind of a goofy little song, but it's fun. It's like, I think the first line is, it all started with Johnny and Barbara, and I can't think of what it was, but it caught me off guard. Well, thank you very much, my man. Thanks, Robert. Love you too, sir. What's the Dave Chappelle, the Chappelle show? It's like, I love you too, sir. Much love. Like, oh, yeah, okay. I love you too, sir. Thanks so much, man. I appreciate that. And I'll keep it up as long as my voice doesn't give out. But TCCK Gaming, what's going on, man? What's up? Bad news. Unfortunately, I cannot make the Living Dead weekend because I have my graduation party. Well, I think that's acceptable, man. Graduation party. I think that's a good reason to miss. Congratulations, man. That's something I never had. I never graduated, so yes, you're looking at a high school dropout here. Go figure. But yeah, good to see you, my man. And maybe we'll catch up sometime. Hopefully this will not be the last Living Dead weekend. I hope it's not, guys. But you never freaking know. It's not looking too good, but there's a possibility that we may have something else in the future. So, but good to see you, my man. Steven, good night. Appreciate you hanging out, my man. Synth, pleasure as always, my man. And yeah, if you want to do a stream on Autopsy, we'll do a full stream on Autopsy. Hell, if John's not busy, we'll get John in here. We'll talk about it. Because there's a lot to talk about in that documentary. I'll have to go back. It's one I'm going to have to take in 2 or 3 more times for sure. But always good to see you, man. I'm sorry I didn't show my ween on my stream, so sorry to disappoint you. John, always a pleasure, my man. Robert says, I can't make it because I had a stalker at my work, so I had to quit. How was that shit for you? Well, was it a female or a male? Damn. If it's a female, I mean, why not? Or a male, I don't know what your preference is. No judgment here. It's all good. It's all good in my book. But yeah, that's wild, man. You're going to tell me more about that, but maybe on the next stream. But appreciate it, guys. You guys are great, as always. Always appreciate y'all. Check out shop.alpharomero.store. Just put up 3 or 4 new t-shirt designs up there. So check those out. Anything you're interested in, please feel free. Like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. All that good shit. Let me get it all keyed up here. But yeah, you guys have a great rest of the week. Great night. Or great rest of the night. I'm fucking tired, guys. Great rest of the night. Great rest of the week. And as always, stay scared. Good night, guys.